What is going on, YouTube? It is your boy, Faithful to God. And tonight we're going to have part 3 of our series, ex-GOCC members speak out. We're going to have former members of the Hebrew Israelite sect known as the Gathering of Christ Church coming out to talk about their experiences, share in detail why they left, and again, this will serve as a warning for those who may be following that particular group or any of the One West Stream Hebrew Israelite camps, so they can understand why it is that we combat and fight against the falsehood that these groups promote. But without further ado, we have, of course, a very well-known former member of GOCC from Australia, the brother George. Brother George, say what's up to the audience. And of course, we have the other brother, and you guys can introduce each other. So go right ahead.
G'day, mates. It's the bro George here. Here with another. He was another prominent member here in the GOCC South Pacific, brother John. And yeah, we're here just to lend our support to those coming out of the GOCC cult and any other cult, really. They're all the same. But yeah, thanks for having us, Mike. Hope all is well.
Absolutely, brother. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We have several people who are going to be speaking tonight. So one of the first former members that we're going to have speak is a person who was prominent in the New York camp of Gathering of Christ Church. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Don't show your face yet, but I'm sure they're going to recognize your voice. All right. Say what's up to the audience.
Grace and peace. Grace and peace.
Introduce yourself.
So I was formerly known as Halam. Real name is Andrew. And like Faithful said, I was a deacon over in the New York branch of the GOCC. Spent many years there. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on, brothers, to get into what we're going to get into.
Absolutely. And I want the audience to know out there that today this brother has found the real truth in Jesus Christ, who is the truth according to John 14:6. The brother realized that what he was being taught in Gathering of Christ Church was complete and utter falsehood and folly. And so today he has completely distanced himself from the teachings of GOCC. This would include things like the 12 tribes chart, false nations breakdown. And matter of fact, the 12 tribes chart is false. It's faulty. He has completely rejected essentially all the things that GOCC was teaching because they're centered on scripture twisting. But I'm going to let the brother Andrew share his experience. So Andrew, if you could, for the audience out there, I want to kind of start off this interview by asking you some questions. Of course, brother George is going to be asking questions as well. Him being a former member of GOCC, I'm sure he has a lot of questions to ask about your experience about leaving. So,
yeah, I do. But what? I'm sure the audience want to know what he looked like.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Andrew, can you ensure? There you go.
There we go.
Oh, that's what happened. I wonder what happened to you, man. I used to watch you all the time on New York, next to old Carlos. I mean, Gabar.
Yes, sir. That was me.
I was
Grace
watching.
Guy still around, still alive and breathing.
Yeah, we all thought you went on a mission somewhere, building another church. I'm being straight up. That's what we thought.
Is that what was said? No,
that wasn't what was said. But you understand,
okay.
That's the Rakah every week. We were saying we're building churches, and then when you see prominent people that were like always on the YouTube, all of a sudden gone, you start assuming, oh yeah, he's probably in the middle of the Amazon there, telling them they're Israelites. But yeah, it's good to see you, brother. Good to see
Likewise,
you.
man. Thank you.
I'll let Faith, Faith continue. Sorry, brother.
Hey, Faith.
Faith, what happened?
Oh, my bad. There we go.
There you go.
My apologies. So my first question is, how did you get caught up in GOCC? What exactly, kind of give the background of how you got into GOCC in the first place for the audience out there.
Sure. So this was really the early days of YouTube. I found what was known as the Light and Body Church. I found them through really going down like a rabbit hole of conspiratorial videos. You know, I was really big into, you know, conspiracies at a young age, probably like 13, 14, started to get into Bill Cooper's work, Behold the Pale Horse, and that kind of catapulted me in that trajectory, if you will. So, you know, it just, you know, in the advent of YouTube, it was something that was, I'm sure you guys have been, you know, been on for a while, and those that are familiar with it, it was just the early version of YouTube is not like what it is now. Is very very different. You couldn't get recommended videos how you are now. So honestly, I don't know how I found them, but they were the first Israelite teaching, if you will, that I remember at the very least. You know, I was 17, maybe 17, 2000, yeah, so 17 at the time. And it was, you know, it just at that time, I didn't really grasp the whole Israelite, the Israelite doctrine portion of it, if you will. I remember there being teachings expounding on like the falsehoods of Islam, and different things that like I said, kind of made sense when in regards to conspiracy theories, you know. So that's how I got my first look into the whole GOCC. And for those that don't know, Light and Body preceded, or GOCC preceded Light and Body, I should say. So yeah, so then after a while, I remember the GOCC YouTube page popping up, and I kind of recognized some of the elders that were there in the video. So I said, okay, you know, I really didn't put two and two together. You know, I was just following them for the information, not really submitting to the doctrine, if you will, or being entranced in that way. It was more just like, it was partly entertainment and partly just seeing information I had never seen before, if you will. And I should preface all this by saying I have a Pentecostal background. So my grandmother, you know, she is a prayer warrior, you know, a woman of God, truly. And she raised us in church, you know, me and my siblings. So, yeah, so I had some understanding of the Bible, understanding that, you know, even in my ignorance, I knew that this right here was power. I didn't understand it. I would respect it, even in my ignorance, but I just didn't, you know, I was never about learning about Christianity in that way. So really the GOCC church was my introduction into you know, studying scripture and really getting into reading the Bible. So yeah, so fast forward, not to make the long story short, I found the YouTube, and then as the years, probably within a year of that, so you're figuring like mid 2008, I started to get real serious as far as like being convicted about the lifestyle I was living. So, you know, I just started to reach out to the phone number that was provided on the website at the time, and I ended up getting in contact with Elder Vakar, and you know. And I got to start all this. I got to take it back a little bit and be very clear about speaking about these individuals like Elder Vakar and Elder Gabar, namely. You know, Elder Vakar, I don't know him personally too well. I've met him on several occasions. He's always been decent with me. I don't have, you know, the super negative experience, as you know, some may have heard through different testimonies, or just hearing from personal experience. Others may have encountered that. I can't say that I have. In regards to Elder Gabar, Elder Gabar is somebody who I love dearly. You know, when I met him, probably started speaking to him when I was 19, and then we met in person before the beginnings of the GOCC NYC. And I know I'm hopping around. I'm gonna bring it back. But he was always somebody that was solid, good person. Like if you didn't have like an uncle or cool bigger brother, you would have hoped it would have been somebody like him. Just a cool dude, just one of those guys that always had your back. Spirit of the Samaritan, give you your shirt off your back. But even all those compliments and all those things being said, and which they're true, and if he would have called me right now and needed something, I'd be there for him in that way, in any way that I could. But there's a separation that has to be made when one is either doubting, the doctrine that they are immersed in and that they call true, the gospel that they've received, if you will. All those personal pleasantries and your relationships and your love for individuals, it has to never be put on the back burner, but you have to always honor, in my opinion, you always have to honor the creator over the creature, right? So I wanted to say that before I get into the, there's going to be a little bit of a long-winded, hopefully not.
Yeah, Andrew,
probably.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Faith.
Okay, there we go. So I wanted to ask something before we go into that. I definitely wanted to ask you this question. So you had mentioned that you didn't necessarily have a bad experience. Now, this is initially, right, coming into the group, or are you talking about just in general during your time there, you didn't have a bad experience in terms of person to person, how your interactions were with him, in terms on a relational level, but as far as the doctrine is concerned, as we're going to discover, and other things are concerned, doctrinally speaking, the doctrines were off. They were just wrong. Right.
Categorically will stand on that. Yeah, absolutely. That is 100% true. And there are other things within the personality of just him in general that I think that could be visible through anybody that kind of streams the videos, and these are things that, those are my observations, but there's nothing personal. There's nothing personal. And I'm going to say that a few times. And the reason I'm going to emphasize that is that one of the straw men that gets built up when it comes to, speaking to the congregation when a video like this is presented, right? Like through Faithful or the other channels that are prominent in regards to giving ex-Hebrew Israelite members a platform to speak about their testimonies and their experience, is that one of the things that I remember even saying myself is that, there has to be a personal beef. There's something that personally went wrong. Somebody wronged somebody. That's why he's no longer. That's why he's an apostate. That's why he left, or that's why she left. And there's some personal beef. And and to be truthful, that does happen. I mean, that's just life. Even within this walk, that does happen.
But the doctrines themselves were the straw that broke the camel's back for you. It had nothing to do with Rakah's treatment of you as a person, but it had to do specifically with the doctrinal aspect that you were seeing just was not lining up, especially with what you were reading in scripture, especially what you research historically. It just was not lining up with what they were saying, correct?
Absolutely. 100%.
So let's do this, right? So your experience of joining them. So how long did it take for you to become a deacon, would you venture to say?
From baptism, which is known as like your start within the organization. So from there to maybe a little less than a year, because I got baptized around October 2009. And, I know we're going to get into Egypt a little bit. But after that, after I came back from Egypt, I linked up with Elder Gabar via the phone. We were doing phone conferences, and then we met in the beginning of 2011. And then initially there wasn't a structure the way you see it now, where people had the titles of officer, deacon, an elder or bishop rather, so on and so forth. So elder was a title that I had, at like 20, but it was more of like a nominal title. Like it wasn't, it was just something that was said. It was given to somebody who had more tenure in the organization, right? So deacon wasn't anything you really heard, or at least I didn't. And in New York, we didn't use that title, if you will. So that was the first title. And then when we started to get more organized, probably a couple of months later, deacon was the title that was put on me. You want me to keep going, Faith, or you had a question?
Oh, yeah. So I did want to ask about, well, and George, you can chime in as well if you'd like to ask any questions to the brother. But by the way, you guys can hear me loud and clear, right?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and
All right,
clear.
just making sure that you guys can hear me loud and clear. So here's the question that I have. When it comes to your experience in the very beginning, right? I'm sure that GOCC had you reading the stuff that you and I have talked about, off camera, off air, Two Babylons, that kind of stuff, the dubious books that Rakad seemingly loves to promote, right, Andrew, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It was, when you're in a community, any type of community, especially something like that, that's very insular. If a book is kind of like co-signed by the elder, within like a week, whoever the author is, their sales are going up, a lot, because everybody's going to hop on it, and purchase whatever book that is. That's just how it goes. But yeah, absolutely. All the typical stuff that you would imagine would be in the Hebrew Israelites library, not so much anymore. Some of those books gave me would give me the heebie-jeebies, so I had to get rid of a lot of them. There's a few I kept for, just for memories. But
one thing I do want to talk about also is what your personal reaction was to the James White Rakad debate that took place in 2016, because that seemed to be the moment when GOCC's walls came tumbling down, because here you had, for the first time, Rakad actually interacting with someone who could readily and easily debunk all his assertions, being, James White being a person who's very learned. And despite the fact that I have disagreements with the gentleman, right, but with James White, I have to give credit where credit's due, because he is a top-notch debater and apologist, especially as it pertains to textual criticism, church history, so on and so forth, and the Bible itself. He is an excellent apologist. So seeing James White dismantle Rakad's arguments so easily, man, before we actually get into some of the other stuff that you experienced, matter of fact, we could actually talk about that now. I'm sure people want to know from someone who was in GOCC, what was at the time, as far as your personal reaction, and George, you can chime in about this as well. What was your reaction to that debate, and how embarrassing was that for members that you knew of in GOCC? George, you can also chime in, because I know what your thoughts are on that. But Andrew, what were your feelings seeing that debate? And sure. was that your first time seeing a top-notch Christian go into a debate with a someone of your group? And how was it different from the people that you interacted with on the street corner?
Right. So I'll answer your second question first. Michael Heiser was the first prominent scholar that I witnessed Elder Wakar engaged in the debate. Well, it really was. It almost started off like it wasn't a debate. It was more of like, I don't even know how that was set up. I got to be honest with you. I remember catching it was like 2013. I remember catching it on the Blog Talk Radio, where you would have to call in. It was something to that effect.
They were trying to sabotage him. They were.
Or yeah, I think that's what it might have been. The idea. They're
100%. That's what they do.
Yeah. So I don't, like I said, I don't remember. So I won't speak to that. But I'll say that I remember even then, and by 2013, I was rooted. I was out there street evangelizing. Really entrenched in the doctrine,
fully indoctrinated into the falsehood that GOCC was teaching. Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, but I
Dunning-Kruger,
remember,
Dunning-Kruger hard.
yeah, right.
So with the Heiser, if we can just touch on that briefly, because I
Yes.
definitely want to deal with more of your testimony. But
Yeah.
with the Heiser interaction, what were your thoughts on that, and what were your thoughts on the James White Rakah interaction
Right.
several years later?
I'll go really quickly through the Heiser, but the only thing I wanted to comment on in regards to that was that was I remember hearing it initially and then catching it maybe like a year later or a year and a half later when it got uploaded again. And that was around the time where I was like, you know, I didn't kind of appreciate how it was conducted. And it was just, he made great points. You know, even then I had to acknowledge that he made great points. And I have to say this, because the name Doctrine, I was never, I believed it and I taught it, but it was something where I always believed that there was going to be, this is my mindset then, that there was going to be a revelation that the YHWH was also a name that could be used, because it was something that I could see, and I saw that was it was like it was futile trying to argue that. So I never did, but I always supported the name that the church obviously taught. But anyways, yeah, so that was my observation when it came to my recollection of my observation when it came to Michael Heiser's debate with Elder Bakar. But yeah, to go into James White. So then around this time you're talking about, George, what was it? That was like the middle of 2016, right?
Yeah, the summer of 2016. Okay. Yes.
Right. So
I was suffering from Dunning-Kruger at that time.
Right. Okay. So I was just coming out of it.
I was.
Yeah. So around that time I had already built a healthy, I was questioning a lot of the doctrine, of the direction of the church as an organization. So, namely, the virgin birth was something that I was starting to look into. And like I said, the name was something that I never was fully supportive of, but I taught because that you know, that was the way of the church. But yeah, around that time, hearing that debate, it was even clear to members that so there was two stances that I saw that were taken. So the first stance was that you wholeheartedly believed Elder Bakar kind of did his thing and smacked James White up. But for those that could see that, because it was even almost like admitted that he didn't really have the best performance. I think it was that he was suffering from jet lag and he just didn't understand. And then it was kind of like, maybe the Most High did that for a reason. So I heard a lot of people just listen. He did his thing and he whooped him. And then the second was like, the second class of people or second group would be like, hey, listen, he just didn't have a good day. But I being that they're setting up a second debate, this is when he's going to get him. Like this, the Most High is setting it up so that he can, come in and give him the KO. He lured him in and now he got him, right? And you found out that wasn't the case when the second debate went down.
Yeah, that second debate was just as bad for him as that first one, man.
Right. Yeah. So if I could just say this real quick, Faith,
yeah,
that there was maybe 2 or 3 deacons at the time. I'm sorry. It was one deacon and then another elder later on that did. Both of them departed from the church, but around that time, me and the one deacon that I'm referring to, we kind of were looking at each other like, oh snap, that wasn't good, and even after the second one, it was like, yeah, that really wasn't good, So I tell you what, there was a lot of questions that arose within just a few people. I can't say like the whole leadership started to question things. I would be lying because I wasn't in those in conversations with everybody about that. It was just one of those things that you kind of just didn't talk about after it happened. But they feel how they feel about it. But for those that are able to discern and just really not even discern, if you just follow debate and how they're laid out and the protocols and things like that, he didn't adhere to any of those rules and then you take it to the information. It was just like the infamous, what was it? The primary source was what? Illuminati 2? So that, and then being that was so big in the Israelite community, the narrative had to be kind of pushed, and you know, some people, like I said, there was a group of people that said that, hey, look, he won, no doubt about it, and there was another group that analyzed it further, and then their comments kind of
talking about the GOCC, right? There were people
within, I'm sorry,
and real quick before you go on, just for the audience out there, keep in mind that GOCC is infamous for bigging up their members even when they do a poor job. But in this case, I mean, you have the leader of GOCC, and there's already kind of like a mixed bag as far as the result. And so that's a testament to just how poorly Rakah did, because any other time, if he would have done even a decent job, they would have just treated it as a victory because, look, you know, James White he's off. He's in Christianity. You know, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And meanwhile, James White was such an unexpected opponent for Rakah that it sent, I guess, it created waves within not just GOCC, but also the Hebrew Israelite community as a whole. And I can attest to this because I've seen it firsthand. When I started seeing ISUPK go on a record saying that James White beat Rakah, you know, being that usually these guys will all endorse each other in some capacity, even when they disagree with one another, people were just coming out saying that Rakah lost flatly. Like he just, I mean, you had several other prominent Hebrew Israelites getting on record saying that he lost. I remember you even had some of the people on the the non-camper side who are, you know, who don't hold to the camper-esque beliefs. They were also saying, man, this guy Rakah made Hebrew Israelites look bad as a whole. You know, it was very devastating at that time. I remember that was something that we witnessed firsthand, sent shockwaves throughout the Hebrew Israelite community, even for people who are not in GOCC, man. So hearing your experience of that is interesting. You know, George, very quickly, if you could, what were your thoughts when you saw that James White debate and what he did to Rakah?
I had Dunning-Kruger, so I didn't, you know, anybody who suffers Dunning-Kruger at the time, like, you can't take their opinion serious. They don't.
By the way,
Dunning-Kruger,
for the audience out there, Dunning-Kruger is a cognitive bias that people who have, let's say, not the best understanding of a particular skill set suffer from. So they think that they're a lot smarter than they actually are. So
yeah,
you know,
anybody in that. I'm not trying to be harsh. It's like if someone has cancer, how can you, like, and the doctor has to tell the patient, how can you sugarcoat that? Do you know what I mean? It's the same thing with people that are in these cults. They suffer from cognitive bias. You know, they have a mental disorder. You know, they can't deal with reality. So I wasn't with reality at that time. That's a fact. Anybody who thinks Rakah won that debate is not in the real world.
But George, even within yourself, were you struggling with that debate? Because I remember you and I talked about this off air. Were you struggling with dealing with the reality of what had just taken place in the debate? Like you're kind of almost conditioning yourself to ignore all the relevant points that James White was raising, knowing that he made very good, strong points that Rakah clearly had no answers for.
You know, these guys, these cult leaders, they poison the well so good, you know, that James White could be telling you 2 + 2 is 4, but because it's James White, you can't take it serious. Do you know what I mean? Because do you get what I'm saying? It's a psychological thing going on here. You know, it's you can't, like, because you're so caught up in this this movement. Like any truth doesn't matter. Like, you know, you're feeling good. You know, your leader can't do anything wrong, and you can't discern anything, bro. Like, that's why people are still. If anybody had proper discernment and was objective, they wouldn't be in that cult today. Do you know what I mean?
But it gets to the point. But it gets to the point where you're conditioning your mind to ignore these relevant,
100%.
very strong points, and you're like, wow, it just, you know, like
that's what I'm. That's what I'm more.
So you certainly struggled with that. And then after you started coming out of that mindset, it became more apparent just how poorly he had done, just as how poorly Rakah had done in that debate, correct? You know, once you were starting to leave the Hebrew Israelite mindset, what you had tried to suppress before, the you know, the truth, you couldn't suppress it any longer because obviously it was now apparent that, wow, like Rakah doesn't know what he's talking about.
I don't know. For me, you know, I listened to it while I was at work. So and like I said, you're just cheerleading your elder on. I didn't listen to it again till probably right before I left, and then I was just appalled. Like I was appalled with myself, really, that I could allow someone who's so incompetent and just a con artist to deceive me. So
Right.
I can't be mad at him. He's going to do what he does. You know what I mean? But I have to try to relay the responsibility on myself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So I definitely appreciate your input on that. Let's bring Andrew back in. So Andrew, and you got to unmute yourself, brother. But so the dealings that you had, with I guess with the members of the camp after that whole James White debate, would you say that was the starting point for you when you started to question a lot of the doctrine? Andrew, would you say that debate was when you started to question things? Yeah, you got to unmute, brother. You got to unmute. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, to answer your question, I was already in the process of, really starting to critically examine the doctrines. So much so that there were certain things that I just could not expound upon anymore. I couldn't teach. I would give that to somebody else. A lot of the stuff I just started to touch on was very basic and simple in regards to character and Christ and just that and that's on YouTube. You can still, if those videos are still up, you'll see that. But that didn't help. So that was one of those things where it was just like, yeah, wow, these things have to be. You start to really, something like that. It was a major thing. I know you guys remember. Faith, you more than anybody. It was a big to do in the community. And, if you're hearing different people's perspective on it, whether you're rooted in the doctrine or not, it's going to something, a seed is going to be planted. I think, it'll be in the back of your mind unless you're just, tunnel vision.
So if I could ask you this question too, there was something that took place after that James White Rakah debate exchange, those two debates. And it was something that's still, if I'm not mistaken, on GOCC NYC's channel. If I'm not mistaken, you're in the video. You're actually the person giving the introduction where you guys tried to rebut some of the things that James White said in the debate. We could go into that quickly, and then obviously we'll segue into the Egypt stuff because I'm sure people want to hear about the flea doctrine and your experience with that false doctrine that GOCC promotes, the whole flea doctrine.
Are you gonna share that video so people can see that this guy was actually there next to Carlos?
That's funny.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that very quickly. So I believe it was I'm gonna put GOCC NYC James White. Give me a second, y'all. Bear with me. So while I'm pulling this up, here we go. Yep. So I got the video now. And I'm sure he doesn't feel proud about this, but look, man, we were all in something false before we came into the real knowledge of the truth, which is the person of Jesus Christ, coming to know him as Lord and Savior, which is not what GOCC promotes at all. They promote a different Christ and a different gospel. And, glory be to God for this brother coming out. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to pull it up. It's going to be on the bottom half of the screen, and the audience should be able to see it. So this is the video that we are referring to. Can you guys see that?
Oh my gosh, that's Elam.
No, it says GOCC debunking James White pseudo scholarship. Very quickly, Andrew, could you tell people the background of this and how bad this was, where you guys literally piecemealed this together and didn't even know what you guys were talking about? Because in hindsight, you now absolutely 100% know. But even then, you realize, man, this was just shoddy, very, very poor, quote unquote, scholarship on GOCC's end. But could you share your experience with this, man, for the audience out there, And this is actually the brother on the screen. So you guys can see he was in GOCC. He was a deacon in there. Lest anyone question, this is actually him in the video. So Andrew, could you share your experience and let everybody out there know what that was like, man? You know, and in the background and everything. Yeah.
So it wasn't prepared by me. I had very little to do with it. It was something that I was made aware of probably a few days leading into the Sabbath, if I remember correctly. But I did review it before it was put up onto the projector very briefly. And then I should say right before that, there were conversations with like maybe a couple of deacons. And I don't remember speaking with Elder Gabar about this. But I do remember, based off of the convos I had with the deacons, that it was going to be early church history stuff. Now I'm going to speak for myself and
the stuff they hate. That's funny.
Right. So I'm going to speak for myself, and then I'll give you my strong opinion after I tell you this, that I knew very, very little about early church history at the time, probably at this time I might have been the lead deacon. But if not, I mean, like I was one of the deacons. I was the deacon that was there the longest, right? So I had no real knowledge base about early church history. So when it was said that this would be the subject matter that was being brought upon, or would be presented, rather, that we're bringing all this information to the table and presenting it. Mind you, this is probably a week after that initial debate with the second debate. Probably within a week and a half. It wasn't too much after that. And, even hearing that was going to be the subject matter, I was like, I had a feeling that, the integrity wasn't going to be there in the research. I know that because you can't really research. So I knew that much, I knew that you couldn't research something as rich, and deep as far as it would be too much ground to cover in a week and a half, even if you're just touching on, I think in this portion, he touched on a couple of the early church fathers. I think Polycarp, Irenaeus,
and very quickly,
maybe,
Andrew,
I don't know.
So here's the thing: in this video, they were actually using sources from a British Israelism group known as the Reformed Church of God, if I'm not mistaken. They were using their material. Right. It was from one of the Church of God splinter groups. So for people who don't know, the Church of God was a group that was headed up by Herbert W. Armstrong, who was a proponent of British Israelism. So he believed that the true Israelites were the British peoples, the peoples of Europe, and very much a reversal of what one Westers promote. In fact, his belief, or the British Israelism belief, actually predates one Westism, right? It's ironic. I would even venture to say Hebrew Israelism, as Hebrew Israelism proper, at least visible Hebrew Israelism. And here you had a guy who was promoting, the whole, identity doctrine from the European perspective. And that's who GOCC was using. They were using a splinter group of the Worldwide Church of God, which is since, I believe that the Worldwide Church of God, the original Worldwide Church of God, after Herbert W. Armstrong's death, became a Christian organization. They reformed their doctrines to orthodoxy, to Christian orthodoxy, to what the Bible is actually teaching. And but the splinter groups that formed from the what was once known as the Worldwide Church of God is today known as Grace International. Those groups continued with Herbert W. Armstrong's teachings, and one of those things that they like to promote is their really poor view of early church history. And ironically enough, because GOCC is very ignorant of early church history, and anyone who saw that Rakah debate would know that firsthand. Anyone who's seen interactions with GOCC with other people who even have a small, minute understanding of early church history would know just how poorly GOCC's knowledge base is in that area. But it was ironic that GOCC was parroting literally point for point In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think they even cited the website itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, The World Today or something like that. I forget what website it was. They literally were using that as a source, and it was a group. The source that GOCC is using is coming from a group that promotes British Israelism, and their understanding of the early church is just completely skewed. It's wrong. Anyone who knows anything about early church history would know just how wrong the claims were, and it's being used throughout this video right here that I have on my screen. You know, Andrew, man, when you and I talked about that, you were actually shocked to realize that GOCC was using some of that material that was coming from another group that promotes the complete opposite viewpoint of themselves. You know,
Right.
But it goes to show how little fact checking GOCC tends to do. They just wanted to find something because James White is bringing information that they're not used to hearing. So the common response is just to Google search something, anything, to have some sort of response. If you could you share to the audience out there that sort of mindset with GOCC? When they're not familiar with something, they'll just try to find anything to rebut whatever you're bringing forth, and they'll just treat it as if whatever, even if it's poorly brought out, even if it's poorly researched, their mindset essentially is anything that you say, just make it sound convincing enough and it works, right? Even if they're not themselves convinced of the information, right?
Right. I would say that's happened for sure. I know I was a part of that, you know, and let me just say this, that the mentality behind that is the ends justify the means. Because we are ethnically chosen, we are the children of Israel. It's almost like you can do no wrong to a certain extent. Not to, you know, not literally like you know, you get away with murder, but the mentality is it's going to be put together as we go. It's okay, you know. And I saw that a lot. But there were deacons and even elder would when the time came for, you know, for them to try to, you know, put together a PowerPoint on whatever subject it was, whether you know we agree with it or not, they did their due diligence in that regard. But there a lot of it that I witnessed, just it was slapstick. It was, and because I took part of that, so I know that. So I was as guilty as anybody in regards to that. So yeah, and this was, like I said, it was about maybe a week after the debate. The debate, it was probably a week and a half after or so. So there's no way that you can really do really have integrity, I believe. And I didn't see it like that then, but now, you know, hindsight's 2020. And I think when you have integrity in your work, it'll show. And I think if you view this, if you do take the time to view this, you'll see that it really was put together. And here it is. It's okay that if you're not well versed in early church history, you know, that doesn't make you an evil person. That doesn't make you, you know, super ignorant. You're ignorant in that particular subject matter, but you know, take your time and do the research. And honestly, if we would have all got together and say, let's really go through this early church history and figure this stuff out before we rebuttal what this man is saying, you know, I'm not saying that a lot of us would have. It would have started. A lot of questions would have started to arise for sure, because, you know, I know you guys know the early church, our fathers, they wouldn't know the GOCC, save maybe the heretical sects that were, you know, that were tore up in letters from, you know, from the real church fathers that represented the true doctrine of Jesus. So. Namely like the Ebionites, that'd probably be the only sect that you would be able to see. Even then, there was portions of them that would have looked at the GOCC, IUIC, and all these other Hebrew Israelite organizations as like, yo, what is that? You know, where'd you learn that? You know, but so yeah. So to answer your question, yes, there was a lot of slapstick stuff that I partook in. Yeah, it wasn't all like that, but there was that element into it. And like I said, the mindset is. It just really is lazy, because you're looking at like a guy like James White, or even Michael Heiser, men that have devoted years and years and years to, you know, academia, you know, pursuing degrees in theology and and I know Michael Heiser's he goes into Hebrew and he invested years into building that acumen and building that knowledge, augmenting his knowledge in that regard, and that's in these subjects. So, but the way we looked at stuff like that, and I looked at it in a certain way where we had a condescending view towards people that were in these quote unquote Babylonian colleges. What are you learning there, right, George? I know you could probably speak to that.
I was just gonna say, it's almost like the mentality was, all right, you're an Israelite, so now all of a sudden you've become the most holiest person on earth. From just an ordinary dude, now you're an Israelite because you watched some video. Now you're the most holiest person on the earth, right? You read, and then it's almost like this thing. I learned one mathematical equation. Does that make me a mathematician? Do I become a maths teacher just after learning one maths equation? And this is what's happening here. You read a couple sentences from a early church history. No. Well, Illuminati, yeah. You read a couple sentences out of context in the early church history. Now you want to teach a congregation about early church history and all these sorts of things. That's what was going on there. You know what I mean?
It's a superiority complex that's developed, right, George? It was just I had that. I know you had that. Right.
Yeah. These are complete amateurs going amongst ignorant people and coming off like they know something, like Carlos Gabar, like Richard, also known as Ricard. And I call them by their real names because these guys they're not Jews. They're fake Jews, just like their fake dialect names.
And by the way, we're going to talk about some of that dialect, man. Someone that asked in the audience, and let me actually pull up their comment. Let me put it on the screen. They had asked about Shawwan Kadash. We're definitely going to go into that before we go to the second portion, because I know we have other people who are going to share their experiences tonight as well, former GOCC members. But
I do have a question though for Andrew, also known as Elam.
Hey, it was Halam, so please.
Halam. Sorry,
yeah, please.
My bad. GOCC New York. What was your role in building that? Because I remember seeing early videos when there was, very poor quality camera, and Gabar would be in his shirt and things like that, and I'd see you street preaching. What was your role in building that church? Were you just a guy who just came in there, or did you help build that thing up? I just wanted to know what was your role.
So I was there from the beginning, from the start of the GOCC NYC branch, and that took place. Like I said, we had our first big gathering. Because before that, it was all phone conferences. We would all probably once a week get on the phone and talk, and our goal was to eventually meet and then start the New York chapter. That ended up happening around 2011, and it was Gabar and myself. It was Gabar and I. We were the only two with any type of experience, because I know he shared his history in regards to his ISUPK lineage, if you will. I didn't have that, but I was just coming back from Egypt, so it was kind of perceived that I had more tenure within the organization, which was true, but not much. It was just probably about 2 years, maybe year and a half.
And Andrew, was there disorganization in GOCC NYC and in GOCC as a whole? Would you say in your time there, did you notice a lot of disorganization in the way that things went about? Because I know that we had Will on the GOCC Members Speak Out Part 2. He was a bishop in the Los Angeles camp, and he said that there was a ton of disorganization. I know the brother George has mentioned the disorganization that took place on his end in regards to having to deal with some of the people in GOCC and the eldership. Would you say that in your personal experience, it was also the case that there was a lot of disorganization, that things were just done haphazardly? It was just a mess.
Yeah, especially I can't speak to anything post like late 2017. But from 2011 to that time, yeah, there was a lot of that for sure. It was just, you know, and you know, the common excuse was that, you know, Israel, you know, we're always late, you know, can never get organized or get anything together. And not everybody was like that, you know. There were individuals that took pride in being timely, prompt, being consistent, and you know, so. But there was, that element was definitely there. I mean, anybody that would try to say otherwise, in the early years of the church, they wouldn't be telling the truth. It just was like that, you know. And I wouldn't be surprised if it may still be like that to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, that's just how it was, you know.
Right. Now, if we could, can we go into the Egypt stuff? The flea doctrine, because that's a big one, because GOCC promotes the belief that you know, Babylon is America, and the whole idea was that you had to leave Babylon, flee Babylon, and their misinterpretation of that. George, could you kind of very briefly explain to the audience the flea doctrine?
Can I share my screen? Is that all right?
Sure.
I just want to play something.
Absolutely.
And this is what probably Andrew was listening to in his early naive days, like we all were. Sorry, man. I'm not trying to embarrass you. Hey, I'm me and you are on the same level as far as you know.
That's all good. I'm gonna
going out there and but 1 second.
You know, but while you're doing that, George, could you let the audience out there know more or less what the flee Babylon doctrine, or if the brother next to you wants to help explain how that doctrine was more or less, you know, conveyed
Johnny,
to members of GOCC.
You want to elaborate on that? Because, you know, you were all ready to leave your family here in Australia while the bombs were about to, the imaginary missiles were going to come to.
Yeah, which makes no sense, right? Because it's Babylon. If Babylon's supposed to be America, why do you have people in Australia being told that they had to flee if Babylon is really America, according to GOCC's doctrine? I don't understand that. You know.
Oh well, you know, just.
But yeah, to the brother, if he'd like to share his.
Do you want to? Yeah. Say, you want to talk about it?
Just kind of give the breakdown of the doctrine more or less briefly. It doesn't have to be too in depth. Just how was the doctrine conveyed by GOCC to you guys?
Well, probably.
I'll tell you, being that.
Yeah. You're the guy. You're the guy. Yeah.
I'll do. Yeah. You know, real brief. The teaching was that Babylon, aka America, is going to be destroyed physically. The proof text to that would be Revelations 18, 1 through 8, Jeremiah 50 and 51. Then you would go to Isaiah. Isaiah was butchered. Isaiah 13, if I'm not mistaken. And I forget exactly what verse there in Isaiah 13, but it speaks about the burden of Babylon, and that was used as a proof text as well. So essentially, Revelations 18 tells you that, you know, Babylon the Great is fallen, has become the habitation of devils, right? And then verse, for all nations have drunk of the wine and the past, you know, so it just really is describing America.
According to them, according to their understanding.
According to the teaching, right?
And then of course there's that passage that says, "Come out of her, my people."
Right,
so
I was just gonna get there. Right.
Yeah.
And then,
so then the assertion is that come out of her is that you need to flee Babylon, which in their view would be America. But then of course you have in Australia, right, George? You guys are being taught that you guys are in Babylon somehow, even though Babylon is really America.
You know, so and in the UK they're getting ready to flee. It's like it's so confusing.
But meanwhile, meanwhile, Rakah has a house in Philadelphia at the time. You know,
yeah,
so
you know,
everyone's fleeing Babylon and he's purchasing land in Babylon, quote unquote Babylon, quote unquote. He's purchasing land in Babylon, but everyone else has to flee. Yeah, flee and send your donations to him so he can purchase land in quote unquote Babylon.
Who knows if he's purchasing? I'm not going to say that, but definitely living comfortably. You know,
yeah, I mean, the fact that he bought a house in Pennsylvania, So clearly, in his own worldview, he believes America to be Babylon, yet he's purchasing land in quote unquote Babylon, even though they have a doctrine that's teaching people to flee Babylon.
Well,
I don't understand how that makes any
how
sense.
about this? How about this? Let's play something that he said back in 2009 that
Okay.
made Andrew want to leave. Is that all right?
Yes.
Let's see. Let's see where we're at.
You notice in the scriptures, it talks about the prophets. Jeremiah the prophet, Isaiah the prophet. Men, regular men that the Most High sent through each society to warn the people. Whether people listened or not, they had to do the will of the Most High. The second verse says, declare ye among the nations and publish and set up a standard. Publish and conceal not. Say Babylon is taken. Bel is confounded. Mordadak is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. What is that saying? That's saying that the gods that we used to pray to no longer have power.
Wait, stop right there. Pause that real quick.
Their images.
That has nothing to do with America. That has to do with the actual Babylon,
Yeah,
the one
100%.
that's in view in the Old Testament. And they're quoting that, assuming that that's talking about something hyper future, when that's in reality talking about the literal Chaldean kingdom, the one that we saw that was eventually taken over by Persia. But somehow, some way, these guys are using that verse to convey the idea that it's talking about so-called America or whatever, Babylon being America. And to me, that is absolute folly right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dispensationalism, that's the problem, but that's a different topic.
By the way, real quick, George, I hear someone in the background. I don't know if they're playing the video.
He's sorry.
Yeah.
John,
So we could have the brother just maybe turn that down because you can hear the echoing. But what I did want to say is this though, it gets
more interesting though. It gets more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's fascinating to me is listening to that and then seeing how they're twisting that. Yeah. So let's continue listening.
This society used to call on for information to help them cannot help them anymore. Why? Because people in this earth are pulling away from all religion. So their images and their idols are being broken. Okay? The people are pulling away from these gods, Zeus, Jesus, God, Allah. So it's broken. We've been reading this for a long time. So what's next? The third verse says, for out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. That's the next prophecy. They shall depart both man and beast. So who's coming from the north? The Iranians, China.
Oh man, this is
coming. They're coming, brothers and sisters.
I didn't know Iran was north of America. I thought it was Canada.
My advice to you all: whatever you have, get rid of as soon as possible, and get out. Whether you're with the gathering of Christ or whether you're with whoever, doesn't matter what group you're with or who you following or what Bible study you go through, it doesn't matter. You better follow the words of the Most High.
Meanwhile, he has a house in Pennsylvania, right?
This is 2009.
Yeah,
and it's crazy to me the
and
mindset
George,
of this guy. Yeah,
very quick before you go on, when you visited the United States, you stayed at Rakah's house. So he had a now. This is 2009. He's telling people in 09, flee, right? Flee, quote unquote, Babylon, which in his view is America. And George, when you came to the United States, quote unquote, Babylon, right? What year was that when you went to stay with Rakah? Would you venture to say?
2018.
So 2018, you came to stay at Rakah's house, correct?
I didn't stay there. I visited him.
Oh, visited there. Pardon me. My apologies. But he still hosted you, right? He was still hosting you in his house. 2018, you're in Rakah's house, which is in where? In quote unquote Babylon, according to their doctrine.
Go Eagles.
You know, and you're going to visit him. And meanwhile, in 09, he's telling people to flee. So that's going to help us segue right into Andrew. Andrew, tell us about your experience with the whole flee Babylon stuff, how disastrous that was, how fallacious that was. Let the audience know your entire experience with that, man.
Sure. Yeah, so like George was showing in the video clip, it was a lot of that rhetoric. Around that time, I don't know if you guys remember, the swine flu was the big, viral outbreak at the time. So that was happening. You just had the rumors of war, right? During that time, this is post Obama, right? So it was just there, and there was a lot that doesn't get spoken about when it comes to what was said about him, but that maybe we could talk about that later. But so within the church, within the echo chamber, this was all going on. This talk of the imminent danger that is coming, or imminent destruction that is coming to America. So I know it would be said that the church did not directly tell anybody where to go, but clearly, as you could hear in the audio, that it was recommended that it didn't matter if you were even down with the church, just go. So around 2009, late 2009, around October, I would say, right after I was baptized, I had that fever too. I was caught up in, heavy in that delusion, and I was speaking with a couple of brothers and sisters that I eventually ended up leaving with. And mind you, I'm 19 at the time. I started saving up money in the summer, and I knew my end goal was our end goal as a group. This little group, it was a group of 6 or 7. It was 2 families and me, and we were going to leave America, right? And we were gonna flee Babylon. Now I do have to say this, that there wasn't like a registry, right? You didn't sign up and say, well, look, I'm going to land here, and then it wasn't organized like that. It really wasn't. It really was how it was alluded to in the video clip, where it's like, just go, But those that were within the inner circle, I'm sure they had their.
But that shows their disorganization, though.
Right, of course, yeah, absolutely. But within the eldership at the time, now mind you, I wasn't an elder or deacon at the time. I was a new member. But within the hierarchy, I would assume that they had it more organized than we definitely did, right? And at the time, it was communicating with the elders was very difficult. If you're probably better off not even trying to reach out, because it was just during that time, I guess, due to the travel, it was like communication was non-existent with them. So fast forward 2010, right before the Arab Spring, right? This is a couple months right before that situation transpired.
Which shows the lack of discernment on Rakazan, that he plans it precisely coinciding essentially with the coming Arab Spring.
Right.
You guys are supposed to flee and go to this safe haven, and the safe haven ends up becoming worse.
Well, and that was a whole nother situation, man. It was a debacle all around. But so I land 2010, like I said, with a family, people that I love dearly. That one family is still within the organization, the other has departed. Thank God. But yeah, so we're there. We're in Cairo, Egypt. The majority of the church is in a different portion of Egypt. This is Alexandria, right? About a 3-hour train ride, and so we're just there, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And what I mean by that is, like, we're here. What do we do now? Right. So there was we get to this community, and there are other people that have left as well, that are part of the GOCC, that had communicated together. There were different chapters of the GOCC that had planned to go to Cairo and not Alexandria. So there's probably a community of about 40 people, and we join, right? And we find out that the majority of people within that community in Cairo, Egypt, is no longer part of the GOC. Yeah. So, hey, can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay.
What I wanted to know is that when you got there, can you share some of your experience and how scary that was for you personally, and just how crazy it was, essentially how crazy it was.
And yeah, I'm going to segue right into that, but I just want to emphasize the fact that as soon as we arrived, thinking that we were really preparing ourselves to enter into the wilderness, right? That there's just, disorder and disorganization to the highest order. Everybody within that section of Egypt is no longer part of the church. I think that's important to emphasize that. And then that's a common theme. Say that
one more time for the audience. Can you say that one more time?
Sure.
What you just said, that the people who they're no longer, say that again.
Right. So when I arrived with the families, right, when we arrived at Cairo, which is, like I said, 3 hours from like the main base, if you will, of the GOCC that migrated, we come to find out that, the bulk of them are from GOCC in the Midwest, right? And as soon as I guess it was premeditated, I don't know. But who I was in communication with said, we're going to Cairo. And they were housing me. So I went to Cairo, right? I didn't know what else to do in that regard. But as soon as we get there, we figure out that nobody that's there, these Israelites that have sold their belongings and their possessions, quit jobs, and to fulfill the commandment of fleeing Babylon, are now in Cairo, and they're not a part of the church anymore. So now I'm like, oh snap, what? Now at that time, I will say that I believed wholeheartedly that during the time that whatever was going to transpire, it was just going to be purging of those that weren't meant to make it into the wilderness, right? So this was just, to me, this was like the manifestation of that prophecy. So anyway, to answer your question, when the fast forward to the Arab Spring, when that started to transpire, I was already on my way out, of leaving, not the church, but leaving Egypt, because, in my mindset, I said, man, we have a lot of people to wake up, right? Why are we here? We can't even profess our faith openly out here. You risk disappearing, right? Like, so who are, and these are all Gentiles, right? They're not our people. So what are we doing? That was my mentality. So I was like, yeah, I got to get out of here, So I went back to New Jersey. So anyways, but around that time, it was starting to pop off, right? It was, you were following at that time, it was Al Jazeera and RT News, and you would follow, you would start to see the upheaval was becoming more organized, right? Or the dissension, I should say, was becoming more organized, and it was starting to look very like dicey, right? Like it was like, oh snap, By the time I left, within a couple of weeks, the country was shut down. There were people that were not able, they were reaching out to me that couldn't reach their family, So yeah, that happened. There was a curfew. Nobody got hurt that I know of. I'm not going to exaggerate and say anything that I didn't hear or witness, but I will say that it was scary times for people that were foreign to a country, and that really had no guidance, because the guidance that they thought that I guess they were under was just really unorganized in that way. But mind you, I will say this, that the main base in Alexandria disassociated themselves from those in Cairo because they were dissenters, right? I personally made it known that, I was probably one of like a couple, the families that I left felt the same way, that we're loyal to GOCC. We don't know what you guys are doing, but we're just here, we're located with you, but we are affiliated with the church. But anyways,
so there was a split happened while you were over there amongst the church.
Right. Essentially. I think it happened before, George. I think it was like, it was something that took place with the Midwest section or chapter of GOC, and we didn't know about it, and we just kind of walked into it like, okay, but they were good people, we all believe, we called on the same name, right? We all believe the same doctrine, but I think they called themselves the truth seekers. Like, so they were like, we ain't listening to anything that he got to say.
It's ironic, Andrew.
Yes.
One of the former members that's also going to speak tonight is going to mention a split that took place on their end. So we're going to have that sister a little later. But man, that is amazing, right? To see the disorganization. In fact, you have someone here in the live chat who seems to be a former member of GOCC. Their name is Leon Jean, and they said, let's see where it is, where they talked about disorganization themselves. Yeah, he says right here, it was very unorganized and it was all about collecting money, and the church have no plans to assist the members during COVID-19, and the elders were just sending mixed messages, speaking out both sides so of their mouth. And so it's amazing to see that this is a reoccurring theme with GOCC, right? The disorganization, the fact that, in fact, Andrew, very quickly, there are people in GOCC today who don't agree with all the doctrinal stances, correct? There are people who do not agree with everything that's being taught, but they stay quiet about it under the auspice of unity, right? Under this idea, this false pretense of unity that has no basis biblically, because what they're promoting isn't a biblical worldview,
Right.
doctrine, etc., right? But people
Right.
will stay quiet just to protect the, first and foremost, I believe it's to protect the identity doctrine, which they can't even verify truthfully. They have no proof of it. And any proof that they do furnish always ends up backfiring on them, ends up being dubious, something that's, antiquated, debunkable stuff that we know for a fact now is absolutely foolishness and was, concocted by I would even say pre-scientific people, but if I'm going off on the rabbit trail, just even people who were not as grounded biblically as they should have been. But needless to say, GOCC seems to protect that above everything else. And it seems like there are members in the organization who don't even agree with one another, doctrinally speaking, but because they want to protect the identity doctrine, they'll go out of their way to simply stay quiet. So would you say that that's something that you personally were aware of while you were in there? Or, because I know that there was a brother, the former bishop of the Los Angeles camp, who we interviewed, mentioned that being the case, where people would try to stay quiet about things like that, and they would essentially turn the blind eye, knowing that they don't agree with all the doctrines, but giving off the impression that they do agree when they really don't.
Right. And you hit it on the head. What unifies them is the belief that Israel is rising in these last days. Everything else is going to get sorted out. So our doctrinal differences, whatever they may be, we can work out eventually. That's what's going to happen, right? Because we're going to get into the wilderness and be purged, and our nation is going to be restored.
Can I ask something, Andrew?
Sure.
Obviously you made it back to New Jersey, but what happened to a lot of people that couldn't get out? Do you still hear from some of these people, like families that, like what Rakai said, they've sold everything. They've left careers, they've left houses, they've left family members. Is there any, do you know any stories of people that were able to come back and rebuild their lives, or some people just stuck there or whatnot?
I personally don't know anybody that is still there. Like, I'm not in contact with anybody that's still there, but I know people that their lives were essentially, not to be melodramatic, but they were turned upside down. I know people that, marriages were broken up. There was loved ones lost there, in the land because they couldn't get proper medical treatment. There was.
So you're talking about death.
Yeah, right. But I'm not going to attribute that to the church. But I'm saying these things happen. They chose to stay there, remain there, and because of their belief in.
They chose because of the advice of.
Right.
They thought of their spiritual leader.
Their belief in
their trust in the man,
and the doctrine, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So these things did manifest, right? These things did happen. I don't personally know anybody that's still there, and I really don't. When I was last a member, I don't remember the topic really even coming up much. It was something that was kind of like, even the thought of fleeing was like, yeah, we'll eventually do that, but it was a far cry from the strength that it was preached with before. Like, it just doesn't even get mentioned. Honestly, the whole idea that happened is like foreign to new members. Like that doesn't even register with them, unless it's brought up by somebody who was around during that era. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, there was definitely negative things that transpired to individuals that decided to take that leap of faith, right? It was poor plan by the vast majority of people that I met over there. It was done on a whim. There were people that weren't members of the church and organization that were there as well, and they were like, "Yeah, we just heard that this was happening, and we're all Israel, right? So we're gonna meet there." I met a couple people like that, So it was there was a lot of unfortunate circumstances that transpired due to poor decision making on behalf of individuals that were encouraged by a false understanding and a false interpretation of certain scriptures, right? So
yeah. Andrew, I know that we have another former member who's going to talk about their experience, and so it's a reoccurring theme I'm noticing. But before we get to this, the other former member, I definitely wanted to ask you several questions. I know the audience has been asking this. So about Shawwan Kadash, I know it might seem like something minute, but people are interested in the fraudulent dialect. Truthfully, how much would you venture to say, or how little would you venture to say that Rakah actually knows in regards to Hebrew, and actual Hebrew, because obviously even in Shawwan Kadash, I mean, that's a for the audience out there, that's not ancient Hebrew. There's a playlist on my channel called Shawwan Kadash Debunked. You can see the refutation of that fraudulent dialect. But for someone like Rakah, how much would you venture to say that he would know about that? Have you ever seen him speaking that dialect fluently ever? Have you ever fluently seen him going, kasha baga baga baga,
Not that I've witnessed personally. As far as like actual Hebrew, I think it was self-admitted on an interview, or I think it was on that debate where James White asked him flat out, "Do you speak Hebrew? Do you read Hebrew?"
I know a little Hebrew. Yeah,
and he said that. So
and then when he was asked to parse a very simple phrase, he says, "Is this plural or singular?"
Right. So because
he was making the appeal to something in Genesis 1. It was something to the effect of and I wanted to pull up the person's comment earlier because he caught this as well. He was mentioning it. It was something to the effect of here we go. Oh man, I just had it, and then all right, here we go. He didn't even know the word create was plural or singular, right? Because James White asked him, the word bara in Genesis 1:1, is that plural or singular? And Rakah goes, that word, that just means create. Like any person with even a modicum of understanding of Hebrew would know that the word is singular. But somehow Rakah making his, trying to have a faulty understanding of Genesis 1:1. I forget exactly what he was arguing for in that moment, but he didn't even know. And I guess in that moment, he like when James White asked him again, Rakah just has this look of bewilderment. He just kind of like shrugs, like, It's amazing though, because these guys feign knowledge of Hebrew. They claim that you have to say Christ and the Father's name in a specific way, right? Yeshaya and Ahaya, according to them, right? For the Father, they believe that the Tetragrammaton is evil, even though they don't realize. And for the audience out there, let me explain this to you. Rakah is ignorant of the fact that the Tetragrammaton is the first person grammatical form of the very same root in Hebrew, the Haya/Hawa root, because the Y and the W, the Yod and the Wa, were used interchangeably in Shemitic languages, including Hebrew. So Haya, Hawa were used interchangeably as a term that meant to be. And they don't realize that Yahweh or YHWH, let me be fair, because I know some people who are watching this might not agree, particularly in the Hebrew Israelites, I might not agree with that pronunciation. So I'll just say YHWH. They don't realize, GOCC, or at the very least are ignorant of the fact that YHWH is the first person grammatical form of the Haya/Hawa root, right? It's the third person grammatical form. The first person grammatically is the term that they mispronounce Ahaya, which is pronounced Ehia in actual Hebrew, that form is related to the third person form, yet they're calling the third person form satanic because of their ignorance of Hebrew, because of Rakah's ignorance of reading Exodus, I believe chapter 3, where God declares, being that he's the speaker, God is declaring that he is he who causes the be. He's he who causes the be, or as he would say, I who caused the be. Hence why Ehye, or as they would mispronounce, Ahaya, is used, but they don't read the verses prior to that where the term Yahweh or YHWH is used to indicate he who causes the be, because that's what it means in the third person. So the first person grammatical form would be I who caused the be. The third person grammatical form is he who causes the be. Very simple if a person understands Hebrew, but of course Rakah doesn't seem to understand that basic fact because he doesn't actually know Hebrew. But for the person who had asked that question, I hope that addresses that. But I did want to ask you, Andrew, was there ever a point in time where you felt like that dialect was just dubious, Shawwan Kadash, where it was like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah. Before my departure, I would say I started to come to that conclusion that it was something that was, you couldn't stand on it. You know, it was no one seemed super proficient in it. I won't say that Hebrew or modern Hebrew was the study of it was frowned upon, but it was like it was almost relegated to like, oh well, if you want to do that, you can, but this is the Hebrew you need to understand. But then, you know, nobody was.
But their grammar is based on that modern Hebrew that they reject.
Nobody was comprehensive in their understanding of it. You know what I mean? So I saw that for sure.
Very quickly, Andrew, I just want to point that out to the audience. The grammar that GOCC employs for Shawwan Kadash, at least in their group, I can't say this for all the other camps, but I can say it specifically for GOCC, is based on modern Israeli Hebrew grammar, right? That's why if you look at their Hebrew Academy, they'll use things like past tense, present tense, when in biblical Hebrew it's imperfect tense, it's perfect tense, etc. They're using it's funny because they'll laugh at modern Israeli Hebrew. And by the way, what I was talking about earlier, first person, third person, that's based on biblical Hebrew, y'all. That's based on the Hebrew they claim to have knowledge in but don't actually understand. It's based on the biblical text itself. The third person grammatical form of the highest / Hawa root is YHWH. The first person grammatical form is the form that they well, not the pronunciation, but you know, the Ehye, which they mispronounce Ahaya. So Ehye is the speaker would use that phrase for himself, or as they would mispronounce it, just for the sake of, you know, so because I know how these guys think. Ahaya would, quote unquote, Ahaya would be the person speaking of themselves. You don't use that term when referring to the person because it's in the first person grammatical form. That's why the third person grammatical form is employed to indicate that you're speaking about that person. And it's such a simple lapse in understanding Hebrew grammar, basic biblical, not modern Israeli, biblical Hebrew grammar. But man, I had to really convey that because it really is a pet peeve of mine. But yeah, man. But I'm glad that you shared that you know, and most of the people in there are not proficient even in the fraudulent dialect, right, Andrew? They're very, very base level understanding, right?
Right. Just, you know, yeah, exactly. Certain phrases and you know, greetings and different things like that. And then there's some that do try to teach it, you know, if you will. But yeah, you can't really be proficient in that, you know.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
man.
It's impossible.
That's crazy. It's a crazy world. That's what I'm saying. It's crazy.
And
George,
you know, man, real quick, Andrew, real quick, just very quickly, man. You know what's crazy is I have a video on the channel showing members of GOCC using modern terminology and trying to rehash it, trying to reconvey it in Shawwan Kadash. So they're using something like broccoli and they're putting a La Shawwan Kadash spin on the term broccoli, on the term, man, it is funny for television. They even have a La Shawwan Kadash term for television. They didn't have no TVs back then. You know what I'm saying? So if anybody wants to watch that, they can see the video on my channel entitled "Modern Influenced on La Shawwan Kadash." But yeah, you were gonna say, Andrew, you were gonna mention.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I wanted to kind of like summarize why it is that I decided to, come on and speak, on a broadcast like this, because I know that there are other people that want to share their testimonies. I'm really interested in hearing what they have to say. So I just make this real quick. As a young man, I found this movement, this organization, and Hebrew Israelism appealed to me, right? As it does appeal to a lot of young men and women. Namely, that was one of the things we would say. It's like, man, there's always so many young brothers and sisters coming in here. It's so much so that it was spoken about. It was never implemented, but it was like, man, where we go street preach or where we go evangelize and hand out these tracts and flyers, we should start going to different areas, because all we're doing is attracting the youth, if you will, right? So, I mean, that speaks to something. And I think it speaks to a lot in regards of those that are malleable, right? Those that are easily influenced. And what everybody has in common, whether you're older or young, is that either you've been disenfranchised with mainline Christianity, or you don't have any understanding of Christianity, of the gospel. And I had neither of those things. I was disenfranchised with Christianity from the little that I did know, and then I just had no understanding. So it was just like, and I was just, an arrogant young man that saw the appeal to this identity that now I know I couldn't prove, but at that time, everything lined up in a way where it gave. One of the things that I want to say is that there was a saying that I think it was one of the elders has said it in New York. He said, man, this organizations in Hebrew Israelite organizations are one of the few organizations that a young man can come in, or any man can come in and be somebody. And, if you come from a certain demographic and a certain upbringing, namely
under false doctrine, just for the record,
right?
Be
exactly.
somebody under the umbrella of falsehood, right?
Right. You can be somebody within Hebrew Israelism, right? You can, within these organizations, you can be prominent, you can grow, and you can, and that's true. You can rise to a certain status, or you can hold a certain title or office within that organization, and then you'll get the accolades that come with that. And that feels good to somebody that, doesn't have that, wasn't validated as a young man or woman, didn't have that growing up as an adult, struggled with whatever sin they were struggling with. And this placates to feeling good because now you're somebody, and you're the somebody that was the apple of God's eye. Right. And, I've had conversations with people that are within, and not only the GOCC, I'm just saying like different organizations within Hebrew Israelism, right? In the context of Hebrew Israelism. And one of the defenses is that, well, look, man, we're not all going to have it right with our doctrine. There's different understandings, and it'll all be worked out. But what everybody's missing, and we know, right? But what everybody is within this paradigm is missing, that the very core of the gospel is not taught. It's not understood. And it's not received. So yeah, we're talking about the GOCC, but I mean, who's more of an expert than Faithful on the lineage, right? There's guys like you and Vocab and Abu Kama that are experts in the lineage of just One West. So just within that framework, you can just see where it started and where it's at now. And the gospel hasn't, from the beginning to where we are now, with the different sects that we have today, the gospel was never taught. So this is why I felt it was, at least for me, I was like, man, there's a sea of testimonies. I'm a background type of guy. I don't, like to do the whole camera thing. And one day I just got, I got on the phone with George, and he hit me with a few words. And then I picked up the phone one day and we're faithful. And then he tore me up. He convicted me. The Spirit, the Holy Spirit used him to convict me. And, in such a way where I was like, the only thing I could think of was like, why'd I pick up the phone? I should ignore this call. I knew it. I knew I should ignore this call. But he was right. And what he was saying is like, listen, you taught this stuff. You were prominent in it and you propagated it. So
yeah, I used to watch you, bro. I used to watch you, man, and like people used to love your false teachings.
Well,
no, I'm just saying they used to like my false teachings as well.
Right.
But real quick, but I did want to say this, Andrew.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just wanted to say this because I know we have a sister here. She's going to share her testimony, but I definitely wanted to say this though, just very briefly, kind of wrap it up. To wrap up your testimony. And by the way, for those out there, Andrew and I are going to be doing some things on this channel, so he's going to get a chance to go into some of the doctrinal stuff to show it very quickly. Today, you embrace the orthodoxy of the Christian faith. In other words, for those out there who wouldn't know, you believe salvation is grace through faith alone, not of works, lest anyone should boast, right? In other words, you don't believe a person earns their salvation, as GOCC erroneously teaches, because they don't believe anyone's saved. They think that you have to, whoever endures to the end shall be saved, misunderstanding Christ's words. But then they don't read throughout the scriptures where you'll see the apostles referring to themselves as we who are saved, or we who were saved, because obviously Jesus Christ, his words resonate in this way. He's talking of his sheep. His sheep endure to the end because they belong to him. Therefore, if you are his sheep, you are truly free indeed, and you will endure to the end. Therefore, your active, true salvation will be manifested in its fullness when you are before Christ, because you will be there, and he will look at you and said, "Blessed are ye, come inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you." Right. So the salvation, though, isn't something that's attained. It's a free gift, as it tells you in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9.
It's imputed to us.
It's imputed to us. And so I wanted that to be on record so the audience would know you believe in faith through grace, right? Not of works, lest any man should boast, but you believe that the good works are the result of saving faith, right? So you believe that, correct?
Correct.
You believe in the Trinity. You believe, and by the way, the Trinity, for Hebrew Israelites who are ignorant of the concept, is not the belief that Jesus is the Father. That's not what Christians who are Orthodox in the faith believe. We believe that the Trinity, or the Godhead, if people prefer, is three distinct persons who share in the one being of God, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? So you believe in the deity of Christ and the Trinity, correct?
Correct.
And you also are a person who, just for the record out there, you personally don't celebrate Christmas or Easter, because I know you for some reason they think if you're a Christian, every Christian celebrates Christmas and Easter. So you don't celebrate Christmas or Easter, but you do affirm the orthodoxy of the faith in terms of your doctrinal stance, correct?
Correct. And I do acknowledge the day of resurrection. So but just not Easter, right, in that way. But okay. And I'm not an antinomial. I don't believe that we're lawless, and we're no matter what we do, we can break every commandment that was written aforetime, and we'll get away with it because we're saved. That's not how it works. Christ is saving his atoning work on the cross of Calvary. That sacrifice, right, is what we have. And it's how we are justified, as Faithful was mentioning. It's his righteousness is imputed to us. He fulfilled the law. He fulfilled it. We nobody was ever able to do it before him. He fulfilled it. He was made a sacrifice for us.
The old covenant, right? He fulfilled that and established a new covenant in his precious blood for the remission of sins for whoever believes. Right.
You are not in the new covenant unless you accept that, and that's important. That's important to understand. For Hebrew Israelites that believe, some believe that we're not, that we're in this intermediary period where the new covenant hasn't been established, and some, like the GOCC, feel we are in the new covenant. Well, if you are, and you don't have that, you haven't accepted that doctrine, or that understanding of what's taught. The scriptures force you to believe that and accept that, But
right, and you also believe that for those who are saved in Christ from all nations, right? From amongst all the nations, not every single, but all from amongst the nations, there's the remnant, right? Of the Gentiles and of those who belong physically to Israel. You believe that there's equality amongst believers, right? You don't believe in what GOCC teaches, where there's this idea that the Israelites are, the first class citizens, and then the Gentiles will be saved as the slave class, essentially.
Right.
So you don't believe that, right?
Of course, Christ said Paul said of Christ that he broke down that wall of partition, or right. Some translations render it wall of hostility, making one new man. We're all one new man. If we are in Christ, we are one. So that isn't the Israelites that were in a Gentile state of mind. That is Gentile and Jews, all one in Christ.
Right.
That wall of partition is destroyed in Christ. So if you're not in Christ, then you can believe what you want. But if you claim you are in Christ, that has to be read, exegeted properly, read and understood as it is written, and moving on with that understanding. There is no hierarchy here or in the kingdom, because the GOCC won't teach that, and the other organization, not just picking on them, that there's a hierarchy here, but there will be in the kingdom. None of that's true.
So according to Ephesians chapter 3, verses 1 through 9, anyone who wants to read that, they'll see the basis of what we're talking about now. Also, very quickly, as the brother said, we're not antinomian. We believe in the law of faith, the law of Christ, the law of the new covenant. Hence, John chapter 1, verses 3, John chapter 1, verses 3, chapter 3, verses 22 through 24. Also, Romans chapter 3, verses 21 through 29, if I'm not mistaken. Also, we can mention Titus chapter 3, verses 3 through 7. There's just a plethora of verses out there to show what we're talking about. Ephesians chapter 2, 8 through 10, obviously. Titus chapter 3, verses 3 through, I want to say, 9. So definitely check those out whenever you guys get a chance. I will also say this, the law of faith, the law of Christ is centered on the same two great commandments upon which the old covenant laws were centered, which is to love your God above all things, love your neighbor as yourself. And obviously the caveat being to love even those who are your enemies, those who despitefully use you, which is something that I can say Hebrew Israelites, by and large, by vast overwhelming majority, especially the camps, do not do that whatsoever. But man, I want to thank you, Andrew, man, for sharing your testimony. Stick around, brother. So we have a sister who was also formerly, definitely, man. We have a sister who was formerly in GOCC. To the sister Jasmine, if you can unmute, definitely introduce yourself to the audience out there, and give us your background, your experience with GOCC. What was it like for you? In fact, if you could just kind of give a brief introduction about yourself so people can kind of get to know you a little bit, and let us know what your experience was.
Can you hear me, Faithful?
Yep, hear you loud and clear, sis.
Okay, great. Well, first off, blessings to everyone. My name is Jasmine. I kind of don't want to give my last name out. I was a part of GOCC for about, I would say about a combination of maybe 4 years, because I was in a couple other groups for a minute, and then I was in like an independent group, and then I was in another break-off group that split with GOCC, and they were considered still kind of one West-ish though. I did grow up in the Christian church. I grew up in a Baptist church, missionary Baptist church. For years, that's how I was raised. Trying to see what else. Did you want me to give the city of the camp I was in?
If you feel comfortable doing this, sis, go right ahead. If not, you can just say if it's in the Midwest or if it's in the South where your particular group is located.
Okay, cool. I was involved with the body in the southern part of the United States. I'll say in the state of Tennessee. Yeah, and they were, I would say, loosely joined to the camp, because they never really, became truly affiliated to almost towards the end, to where when they split. But they still, we still went to all the gatherings and the feast days, and we still were required to, not required, more so requested to take the classes they required, was selling, the Bible Academy classes and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we were yeah, I mean, that's the basis and the summary of my background with them and my Christian life. So
Okay. So real quick, sis, if you could, while I'm talking, because I can hear myself echoing on your end. So when I'm talking, just so it doesn't, we don't get the feedback. Could you mute, and then this way, after I'm done, you can just come right in. You can unmute yourself, and then. So here's the thing, sis. Tell us about the deception that you personally saw in GOCC, the falsehood, the things that you began to observe. And, or if you like, can you tell us what ended up getting you caught up in GOCC first and foremost? What was the driving force for you personally? And then what did you begin to see in terms of falsehood within the group that started to open up your eyes? And if you want, you can also share about the split and everything else that you and I have talked about, off air. But definitely, share your experience, in GOCC, what opened up your eyes. Definitely feel free to share your experience.
okay, that's so I'm not echoing right now, though, am I?
No, you're not.
Okay, great. I guess first of all, what brought me, or what got me interested in GOCC was with in the city that I'm in. I got through Facebook. I was reconnected with a couple of high school friends. They were they would post certain things, the memes and everything that Hebrew Israelites had floating around, certain things about, we're the chosen people, stuff like that. And where my mind was at that time was, it intrigued me, it deeply intrigued me. Just with different racial injustices going on and everything, it intrigued me. And I think a combination of that would be the fact that, like Brother Andrew said, I've always kind of been a conspiracy theorist to a certain degree. My family's always talked about me for always researching and trying to find out the truth on everything. And I've always kind of doubted everything. And so I think the combination of both those things kind of, and then another aspect was the fact that I was trying to get closer to God as well. Like, I was thinking, because of certain personal issues that were going on in my life, some things weren't turning out the way I was planning them to. So I was like, well, maybe if I get close to God, let me follow his commandments the way they say exactly in the Bible. Maybe I need to, pray more and fast more. I was just doing, wanted to do anything I could to, get my life back straight, do what I felt like I needed to do to get my life back straight with God, which, in retrospect, it was trying to earn blessings, you know what I'm saying? Which is what they teach, it's like a earned salvation. So I think a combination of all those things kind of led me to like seek, well, not led me, what kind of had me like, okay, I'm it perked up my ears to see what they were talking about within the group. And how did I get connected with GOCC specifically? I'm trying to think. It's been a while ago, but I know. Oh yeah. The guy that a high school friend that I reconnected with, he was like a Torah only Hebrew Israelite. I didn't find it out until I told you I talked to him on Facebook. We reconnected. I called him. He was giving how Hebrews Israelites do. They just start running off stuff they know, and so that's how he was. And I got connected. His stepsister was the wife of like the leader here in my city of GOCC. So I got connected that way to the group. And yeah, that was like in 2000 and I would say 13 maybe. Yeah, 2013. And yeah, I was in there after that. I was in there and yeah. And I'm trying to see. I think that's the basis of how I got in there. And it started. And as far as the deception, now you said, so I'm having to go to the end. The deception I saw in there was, right off the bat, was them not wanting to use the name of Jesus. That was something that I pushed as well. I would try to.
So if you could just mute for a second, sis, just for a moment, because yeah, there you go. I imagine that Deuteronomy 28 and the so-called belief that African Americans are somehow supposedly the biblical Israelites was one of the things that they used to sucker you in, because I imagine it was essentially true for Andrew that they used this falsehood of him believing that he was an Israelite to sucker him in some capacity. So I imagine the same was true for you as well, that they used that to kind of get you hook, line, and sinker, right? To at least consider their doctrines and that kind of thing. And as you were saying, you were such a big conspiracy theorist, that probably resonated with that conspiratorial side of you. And because you were already trying to search for truth, you felt like maybe this might be the truth that you were looking for, correct?
Right. It definitely played a part. I think that kind of went into the whole thing that I was saying about, just looking at the racial injustices that were going on, within the United States, within our country. And it kind of all correlated. The Deuteronomy 28, how black people were, are done wrong here. So yeah, it did. It resonated. Never one time did I actually stop and dig into that scripture like I should have. It just, when you first hear it, it's like you don't examine it like you should. It just, I had never heard it because I went to a Baptist church all my life. I never even had dug into the Old Testament, let alone heard that scripture. So
if you could just mute for a moment, just very quickly, so I can convey this to the audience. This is the importance of doing thorough biblical study, front to back of the Bible, and to examine what it says, because this way a person can have the appropriate defense against something like Hebrewism, which misuses much of the Old Testament. And if a person has no understanding of the Old Testament, then they have no way of really combating back against it. Also, what the sister mentioned about the injustices that transpire in this country, particularly to African Americans, this is why it is important that a person have an understanding of issues as it pertains to that community. Because if a person is not aware of the ills and the troubles that are afflicting that community, as a Christian brother or a sister, if we have members of the body who belong to that particular community, we need to be well aware of the things that are afflicting that community so that we can better help people in the African American community cope with a lot of these problems that, for example, everyone on this panel is against, racial injustice against African Americans. Because what happens is you have Hebrewism that comes into the fray, deceives these people into this false belief. And what they're doing is they're seeing the lack of response potentially from congregations and being able to appropriately deal with this issue, the issue of racial injustice against African Americans and maybe even Latinos and other groups that are on that 12 tribes chart that they misconstrue and present as being biblical Israelites when they're not. But that's the point. You have a group like this that comes in with this false doctrine. If your basis is already unsound, that you don't understand the Old Testament in light of the New Testament, that kind of thing, or even just reading the Bible as a whole, and you don't understand how racial injustice or racial issues work, you have a group like that comes in and you really don't have a defense. That's why it is important to have an understanding of both. And the reason why this channel is so good at debunking Hebrew Israelism is because, one, myself being someone who did immerse myself in these issues, also being Latino, something that this is an issue that not only affected me before I was saved, but it also was something that resonated with me after I became saved, because I felt like this needed to be addressed and it wasn't being addressed properly enough. But glory be to God that, over time, the Lord has raised up many people to combat against this falsehood, and more people are coming out of this deception. But I just wanted to say that, and sis, if you could you go ahead and share your experience? What began to open up your eyes when you were in there? So, of course, they suckered you in with Deuteronomy 28. If you could actually share your experience of when you joined, and then what began to, cause you to open up your eyes during those 4 years.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I forgot to say one little nugget too. I between my time of before I kind of like got all the way into GOCC, like maybe a few years before, but kind of was the doorway into schooling into Hebrew Israelism. I floated around like in a lot of Hebrew roots groups, and I floated around in some like SDA circles, like 7-day Adventist circles. So I forgot to add that in there. All about, trying to serve the Lord better, through my works. They were it was a lot of works based stuff with that. But yeah, as far as what started to open my eyes, I mean, the main thing was the deceit and the control, through the scripture, which was like so that was so blatant, and it was so insidious on like a lot of different levels. And I mean, I can get real deep, but I don't want to get that deep. I can't get that deep on here, but the mind control, the abuse, the subtle, the God complex that they have, the leaders and of the organization. I mean, all of that stuff. That's what started to open my eyes first off. And like I wanted to go back with the name of Jesus, like I said before. I pushed it, and I would tell people, the letter J wasn't created until like 400 years ago, like they say, something like that. But I never fully believed that, because everything in my spirit never let me believe that using the name of Jesus was wrong. And being so specific with the name of God, like being like kind of a sacred namer, like nothing that never sat right in my spirit, because for my whole life I have seen like so many miracles, and the power of God literally moved, when the name of Jesus Christ was spoken. And so for somebody to come along and tell me, oh, that's like the name of Zeus, it's like Hail Zeus, or like, basically like you're in idol worship if you use the name of Jesus.
Can I just stop you for a moment very quickly, because I know how GOCC thinks, and so if you could, sis, thank you, very quickly. We have videos on our channel debunking GOCC's false understanding, because they first of all, Jesus doesn't mean Hail Zeus. Anybody that knows even a little bit of Greek knows that the term for Hail Zeus, and what I'm going to do very quickly, I'm going to post it on my screen so you guys can see for yourselves that this is a very, very poor argument that members of GOCC present, and they're essentially just parroting it from a man who himself is ignorant and presents these sort of arguments because he doesn't understand how Greek or even Hebrew actually work. So what I'm going to do very quickly is just show the audience out there, because I know how GOCC thinks. They're going to assume that if we're not actively debunking all of this in this live stream, that somehow we have no answers for it, when we absolutely have an answer for every one of these faulty claims that they're making. So very quickly, I'm going to go ahead and show it on the screen right now. This is Hail Zeus, and this is how it would actually appear in Greek. And this is something that GOCC is absolutely 100% ignorant of. This is why their argument collapses. And I'm going to explain the whole how a person gets Jesus and everything like that. And all right, so here we go. This is how a person says Hail Zeus in Greek. This is actually Hail Zeus in Greek. All right, for the record. Very quickly, the name Jesus is a transliteration from the Greek Jesus, which itself is a transliteration of Christ's Hebraic/Aramaic name, which was Yeshua, not Yeshaya. Yeshua, we know this for a fact, because if you look at any translation, for example, in the Peshitta, you'll notice that in every instance where in our English Bibles the name Jesus appears, the name Yeshua appears. And we know for a fact that even in the very name, in the transliteration, pardon me, Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus, notice there's an E sound, which debunks the idea that there was no E sound in the language that the Israelites were speaking. That immediately is debunked. But the sigma at the end is to indicate that, if I'm not mistaken, that the name is masculine in the Greek language, obviously, if you're transliterating. And the fact of the matter is that we know that that transliteration is not satanic, because Joshua, whose name is roughly equivalent to Jesus's name in Hebrew. All right, so Joshua's name is Yehoshua and also Yeshua, the shortened form, just like Jesus's name, Yeshua. His name was transliterated as Jesus in the Septuagint by the Israelite translators of the Septuagint before the time of Jesus. And so there is no conspiracy. It doesn't mean Hail Zeus. The Israelite translators of the Septuagint weren't trying to say that Joshua's name meant Hail Zeus when they transliterated it that way. They were simply trying to capture the pronunciation using the rules of grammar in Greek, taking it from the Hebrew into the Greek. That's why you get the name Jesus. Needless to say, though, it is not a conspiracy. It's not what GOCC purports it to be. And there is nothing wrong with calling him Jesus, which is the anglicized form of his Greek transliteration, his name in the Greek transliteration, which is Jesus, which is derived from the Hebrew/Aramaic. So Yeshua, Jesus, and Jesus are all the same name. And for the record, the letter J, I've heard this argument. They'll say, well, it's only 400, 500 years old. Here's the problem. The letter J and the letter I were interchangeable characters. The J and the I were essentially the same letter, the J just being a swash character of the letter I. So the J is etymologically related to the I, and the I is etymologically related to the Y, to the Y, to the Semitic Y, the Shemitic Y, the Hebrew Y. So there goes that argument. Debunked. You can call on the name Jesus and it's not evil. If anything, what GOCC teaches is absolutely 100% heretical and evil. But go on ahead, sis. If you could continue on. I just wanted to get that out of the way.
Yeah. Thank you for expounding on that, Faithful. But yeah, I think the next part they really got me to open my eyes was the fact that the Christology of the Hebrew Israelites, I never, like, those are the type of things that they don't say out, like when they're street preaching or like directly out in Sabbath class, that Jesus is not to be worshipped. They kind of say, like, I know with GOCC, not in other camps, like I know other camps say it straight out, but GOCC is a little bit more, they're the camp for the people just coming out the church. They're kind of gentle in some ways, compared to the other One West groups. But So it was never said straight out, because I think if I would have heard that straight out, I would like run the other way, because I've always understood that Christ is the second person in the Godhead, and I've never not believed that. Even with not calling him Jesus, I could deal with that, but saying that I'm not supposed to worship him, and then the men in that organization, I know from what I saw, they through the doctrine, they believe in bad theology. They believe that they're like almost like demigods, like, well, small g gods. So they would always speak on themselves. They would always like say weird things. Like, it was weird to me hearing it, like they were like Christ was their brother, because they would feel like they're like on the same level.
So they would misuse that psalm. Just very quickly, they would misuse that psalm, that ye are gods, not realizing that was actually talking about spiritual beings. And anyone, if they want to look into this, Michael Heiser has an excellent series on this. And Michael Heiser is an actual scholar and professor of Hebrew and ancient Near East and the Bible. He has a video entitled John 10, Gods or Men. And so he explains what that Elohim means in Hebrew, how it's used as a generic designation for spiritual beings, not in this idea of like polytheism or anything like that, but he goes into it very in depth, gives the scholarly understanding, the ancient Near East Shemitic understanding. And he's a Christian, by the way, but he is a learned Christian. Unfortunately, GOCC is still parroting the belief that they think that the Israelite men are gods, little g gods, and that Jesus is the highest of the little g gods. And that's why they'll say they're just like, he's like their brother in that sense. Also because they believe Jesus Christ was, or they believe that they're Israelites. And since Jesus was an Israelite, they're related to him in that sense. But I just wanted to point that out for the audience. But again, just check out Michael Heiser's video entitled John 10, Gods or Men. In fact, I'll very quickly, just before you continue on, sis, I'll show it for the audience out there so they can see what the video looks like. It's on the Naked Bible podcast. And by the way, that's not like some sort of derogatory term. Naked just means if we're just dealing with the scriptures and what they're actually saying with the plain reading in the Hebrew and the Greek, you're going to notice that the understanding that these groups like GOCC present is just completely false. So this is the video right here. Very quickly going to show it, and then we're going to continue on. And I've really got to do this because you already know what the mindset of members of GOCC is like. So you always got to start, knocking down their bad assertions, or else they'll shut down. So this is the video right here. Look, I'm going to highlight it very quickly so you guys can see where it says Naked Bible Podcast 109, John 10, Gods or Men. Highly recommend that you guys check this out. Michael Heiser, actual scholar. He actually refuted Rakah on my channel. You can check that out. Michael Heiser versus Rakah of GOCC, their interaction where he completely debunks Rakah. So go right ahead, sis, if you could continue on.
Yeah, and I think the other thing was that, adding on to the bad Christology was the fact that, they would try to point out how, Christ wasn't crucified because, because I'm going into him claiming to be God, not because he was, claiming to be God, but because, he was bringing about a new way, a new understanding of keeping the law and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, because they still believe that he was just a divine man, and that goes, it all flows into the bad doctrine, with the, Christ coming about through sex and not through divine conception. It all goes, it's just like it's a wormhole of filth, and so, I mean, I always doubted all of that stuff, but I never stopped to think of it, because at that, where I was at in my mindset, it was like it was like a family, you know. At that point, I had grown close to a lot of the people there. You do everything with the people. You don't have your own life. I mean, that just goes into the control that I wanted to emphasize. It's like we had no time for our own families. We had no time for our own, you know, lives. Like the people who actually worked would come to class and come to gatherings like exhausted. Like, I mean, it was just like that's where the cult, that's where why it's defined as a cult. It would take up so much of your time, you know, and you're so, you know, and then they just want to emphasize the family kind of structure that they have. And, oh, we all believe the same things. We all believe that, you know, African Americans or Black people are done wrong, and let's keep that the focus. Not we have a doctrine, but let's not. And it's bad. It's a bad doctrine, but we're not going to point. You know, let's not look too deep into that. Let's just look at the fact that, you know, we all have the same struggles and we get along and we hang out, and it was just like a family thing. And
so you felt it wasn't biblical. It was more like just like a group that had a common belief, in this case African Americans being Israelites, and they would tell you that, yeah, we all agree on the same thing, but really you guys didn't all agree on the same thing, right, Jasmine? There was disagreements even within the group on doctrinal stances, correct?
That's correct. Oh yeah, oh definitely. Yeah, and kind of sliding into that, you know, as far as the split goes, since we were affiliated, we were, you know, affiliation of GOCC. We kind of wanted to go along with what, you know, Ricard was doing and teaching, as far as like, you know, supposed Edomites or Caucasians, you know, coming to like our feast days, and we wanted to be on one accord with that. But nobody in that body in the city I was in agreed with that. They were like stern on that, and it was like only a few people. Like it was I would say it was like 3/4 believe that, you know, Caucasians weren't supposed to, you know, come to like Passover and all that. And like it came to a point where this guy, he came in because he had been listening to GOCC for so long, and he was a black, I'm gonna just say he was a black guy. He was married to a Caucasian woman, nice lady, real nice lady. It came to a point where, like before we had our Passover gathering, like the group, as far as the men and everything, they were like in dissension because, you know, whether she was, you know, she could come or not, because like I said, they wanted to be on the same page as GOCC, where Ricard was teaching. You know, they can come in, you know, they'll be grafted in or whatever. I can't remember like that. I'm kind of 2 years removed from knowing the precept pack, so excuse me on some things. But you know, we wanted to be on that same page. So it came to the Passover. The guy brought his wife, and they had like 6 children between them. And they didn't even allow the lady to eat at our Passover gathering. Like, they had drove 2 hours from a city in Arkansas. Like, now it was like 3 hours. They had like 6 children, and the lady couldn't even eat. And I was like, they hadn't ate all day because they think they were, you know, Passover's a big thing, it's a big feast. And they didn't even allow the lady to eat. And I mean, there was things like that kind of had me like, oh no, you know, I'm not against a single person. I'm against the general injustice going on in the world, but I'm not against a certain person to where like I want somebody to not eat. You know, like that's just getting to where it's, you know, it's petty, it's bad. And just that started the split, because that was one thing that started the split, I would say. Yeah, about you know, whether we should accept supposed Edomites into our congregation or not.
Would you say this is Georgia? How you going, sis? I've been listening. Good to hear from you again. So would you say, and even Andrew, you can chime in on this, the question, when so-called Gentiles would come into the congregation, would they be looked at as, second-class citizens? Would they be treated differently? Things of that nature.
I would say, at least in the New York branch, that never happened. I didn't see anybody disrespected in that way. We did have white members that would come through on feast days, and I never saw anything out of the ordinary. But like I said, there was that underlying attitude of supremacy. Superiority is probably the better word. And whether that was, whether that manifested in a certain way, in a disrespectful gesture or manner or words to somebody, I didn't hear about it. I didn't catch wind of that. But I know for the most part, that was not what went down.
Interesting. I did want to know from you and from Jasmine, was there ever a part of you where that foolish mindset, the whole really poorly thought out nations breakdown, 12 tribe chart, was there ever a point in time when that kind of thing, when you guys would essentially try to was there ever a point in time where it felt like unconvincing, like there were days where it just didn't resonate with you, it felt off, it felt wrong? Did you guys ever have that experience of it just feeling like, it just didn't feel right?
Oh yeah, you would have that internal struggle, I would say. I'm speaking for myself, of course, but I could also speak for others that I've had conversations in regards to just the nation breakdown or the 12 tribe breakdown in specific. Yeah, you would have doubts, but that you viewed that doubt as like the general lack of faith that one who is a believer would have in general. So you would, if you didn't really do a deep dive into that or weren't looking into it in thoughtfully, you wouldn't really pay too much mind into the doubt that you would have towards it. It would just be like, well, you got to build up your faith, bro. I've said that before, and I've had that said to me. So,
faith,
And,
in. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was gonna say that was always like their go-to. Well, you just gotta have faith. It's similar like Mormons. Like if you have doubts in the Book of Mormon, they'll just tell you, well, you need to just have faith. It's like, okay,
yeah, kind of like GMS saying that their belief that Masha is a king, is King David, is a thing of faith. It's a thing of faith. They think Masha is King David reincarnated. For those who don't know, Masha was one of the 7 heads at the original school, and they taught in the original school that he was the one king. So he was King David reincarnated. Yeah, right.
But I wanted to ask Jasmine, though. I wanted to ask Jasmine about what do you call it? The treatment of her being a woman. You know what I mean? Misogyny. Like, do you feel, even though you found out you were a Hebrew Israelite woman, did you feel like when you came into this, you felt more empowered, or did you feel like more oppression? Maybe not now from the so-called Edomites, but now you were starting to be oppressed by your husband because now he's supposedly a king and you're supposed to be subjective to him. Was that type of behavior going on where you were in the GOCC camp you were part of? Did you already say which one it was? Was it Mississippi, right?
Yeah, I was in Tennessee, right above Mississippi. So yeah, yeah. I mean, like I was saying, it all goes into the control. of everything. The women, okay, I forgot to say this part. The leader, he was a young guy. He previously was loosely joined in IUIC, the IUIC camp here. So he already leaned more towards IUIC teachings more than GOCC. He just his demeanor didn't fit with IUIC as much, so I don't think he was accepted there. So I think that's why he kind of came to GOCC. He was a little more clean cut, I would say. But his beliefs were still very IUIC. He was very charismatic. He's very he was a very approachable person. He could get you to believe anything. And with that being said, he subtly pushed a lot of the racism towards Caucasians within the GOCC doctrine. Let me say it like that. So that's where the non-acceptance of our strong non-acceptance of the Caucasians came from. And I know it, like Andrew was saying, I know it wasn't like that up in the Northeast camps, because they were right there in the center of it. A lot of people didn't see what went on down in the South and the other states or whatever. And so, like I said, as far as the way the women were treated, I did meet a guy within the camp. I had already been there maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, and maybe like a year and a half. And he came in from a Seventh-day Adventist church, and we were kind of put together. Like I don't even understand my mindset to this day to where I would be put with somebody. I mean, but they kind of join you. They kind of like, look at two people. Oh, you should consider
like an arranged marriage.
Yeah. And that's something that I would never imagine being, involved in. But it was so subtle. It was very subtle. And so we ended up getting together. No kind of courtship phase, no kind of nothing. Like I said, to even speak about this, it's not even me. It's not even the person that I am. It was no testing, no trying of this person's spirit, anything. We just kind of got straight into a relationship. And we actually, I know some camps don't believe in getting married on paper, but we were actually married on paper, according, through the state. And it was just a bad situation. He came off as one way, but then like the mask fell off. And at this, I have to say that in this time, the split was about to happen, because like I said, the leader that we were under, he had a strong bent to like the more extreme One West doctrine. And so he was moving a lot of the like Andrew was saying, so many young men in there. They just were looking for a place. So he was able to move them into a more extreme One West thinking, if I can say that. And so at that time, all of the men are starting to change, so it was like this strong change happening, because the doctrine, you could tell it every Sabbath we were going, it was starting to sound more ISUPK-ish every week. And so that kind of spilled over into my relationship with my husband. And yeah, it just got bad. It was some it started off like it's a lot of verbal, emotional, abuse abuse in that way, and then a lot of spiritual abuse as far as like, trying to use scriptures to exact a certain control over me, and to manipulate me into a lot of things. Like I said, it's embarrassing to talk about now, because it's not me. I've never been able to be done like that. And I almost want to call it witchcraft to a certain degree, because it is. And so and then, like I said, little by little, the the mindset of the group was going more and more extreme. So it spewed over to my marriage deal. So the abuse kind of got physical. And I mean, all the men were like that. I mean, the women were treated like slaves. A huge thing was that we were not supposed to like directly be reading the Bible. We were supposed to be taught the Bible through our husbands, and we weren't supposed to, we don't have direct access to God. We have to go like, you have to have a covering, which is like your husband. And I'm just like, what do you mean I can't directly pray to God? You know what I'm saying? Like that's no, I'm not with that. Now, it wasn't said straight out. It was always implied subtly by looking at certain scriptures, like with the man as the head, and the Christ is over the man and then over the woman. So it was like, we're supposed to lean on our man for everything spiritual. And I'm like, I've never been like that.
Can I just chime in very quickly?
Yeah.
It's funny because Esther prayed to God. So why couldn't you pray to God, but Esther prayed to God? That makes no sense, right?
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, a lot of women in the Bible. I mean, we could go to a lot of other examples, and I was just like, what do you mean? Like, I can't pray directly to God, and I had to lean on my husband for all this understanding of the word. Like, that's garbage. That's garbage. And we would be studying. I would be asking him questions, and to be honest, the man that I was married to was very unintelligent. He wasn't well read, and I'm very well read, and I'm very, I consider myself to be scholastic and self-taught and like a dialect in a lot of different areas. So for him, for this guy to try to tell me everything about the Bible, it was like, I don't feel right. He was explaining stuff crazy. He was like, he couldn't even define certain words, and I'm like, I'm supposed to, follow you in this, and it just didn't seem right. And I mean, I knew it wasn't right. So, but yeah, the women are just treated really, really bad, really, really poorly. And so yeah, when I started to sway away from the church, it was like they attacked me a little, but my husband was still there. So it was like basically I was still there, because as long as both of us didn't leave, because then they would have blamed him as being swayed by his wife to leave the truth. But while we were still married towards the end, I sent the
so-called truth, by the way, so-called truth.
Text. Yeah, I sent the leader's wife a long text, explaining that I no longer want to keep the law of Moses, because that's not the way that I can gain salvation. I can only gain, have salvation through Christ, and faith in Christ alone through His grace. And I sent her a long text, and they end up doing a whole Sabbath lesson about the text that I sent. And this was after I had split up from my husband, and I had to just leave the relationship. I left everything behind. I left the relationship. I left the church. I just tried to start over, basically. Yeah.
That is really unfortunate. And it goes to show the mindset that takes place in these camps, where you have just disorganization, doctrinally speaking, even in the individual lives of a lot of the members in there. Andrew was attesting to that earlier with the whole Egypt stuff. But as you can see, and then it seems like, and Andrew, if you could chime in, it doesn't seem like there's much accountability, right? Like in terms of the leadership, when it comes to these kind of things, some of this stuff seems to be brushed under the rug, it seems. Now, this is just from an outsider looking in. So you being inside, did it ever feel like some of this stuff was almost brushed under the rug? Like for them, the important thing is that you just wake people, the people who are in the 12 tribe chart, that you wake them up to their so-called true nationality, right? Everything else is kind of just overlook, like, oh, Israel's gonna be Israel, we got to accept that, that this awakening is gonna bring in a lot of bad fruit, but we gotta bring all these people in. Like, is that the mindset that GOCC typically has when it comes to issues like this, as far as your personal experience was concerned, Andrew? I mean, did you see this?
I could attest to major, like, for me, I'll give you an example, the hopefully Babylon thing, right? I think that there should have been accountability in the form of maybe a video put out. Hey, look, we were wrong on this, and there were people that were affected in certain ways, and we totally missed the mark on this, and we didn't, we got it wrong, or the time that what was it in the Gulf Ocean, there was an oil spill that took place. This was like in 2011, and Ecclesiastes was a text that was brought up, and that was used to show you that was prophecy being fulfilled in the way that I think it reads that that the man, the gist of the scripture was that it was speaking about how fragile a man's life is, and it uses a metaphor of a fish being caught in a net, something to that effect. George, I think you kind of know what I'm talking about. And so that was used as a scripture to say, hey, look, this is prophecy being fulfilled. And if you know the book of Ecclesiastes, it's not known to be it's not a prophetic book. So it
is not a prophetic book.
Yeah. So
there's no prophecies.
Exactly. So what I'm saying, on that level, that was something that even as an active member, that was one of my largest gripes. Like, listen, nobody's perfect, nobody gets it right, but why aren't these things being addressed? But as far as like, regular church business, if you will, in the New York branch, things were addressed. I witnessed certain things that I didn't agree with. But there was never anything that wasn't brought up to the forefront and addressed when it was made known by the membership. So I can never say that. But as far as like the major things that I thought were huge transgressions, like I said, the doctrinal inconsistencies or the false prophecies, if you will, Obama was spoken about in a way where it was like, hey, look, this man is who's the man spoken of in Daniel. In the book of Daniel.
Right.
Like, what's that about? So
Last
things like that
were,
right. Those were major grievances for me. And in that way, there was no accountability. But as far as like church business, like I said, that was taken care of in the New York branch. I can't speak for any other, any other church. But yeah.
So from your personal experience, that was your experience. Okay.
My personal experience, yes.
Now to the sister Jasmine. So, what ended up happening to that group? So there was a split that occurred. So is there any, remnant of that group as it is as regarding their affiliation with GOCC, or has everyone just gone their separate ways? What ended up happening with the collective?
Yeah, before I get there, I wanted to kind of add another thing to the point about why the split occurred. So like I think I gave a few instances. It was supposedly some funny money business going on, people taking the church money and doing stuff they weren't supposed to do with it. It was like some splits as far as the beliefs on the doctrine on Gentiles. And then another thing was the flea doctrine, because it was like a strong dissension with people who were like didn't have the funds, because I came in at like the climax, like the height of the flea doctrine and stuff. Like, I had a passport. Like, before I met my ex-husband, I was actually connected and hooked up with a guy in Egypt, and I was supposed to be with him. I was supposed to like go over there and meet him and be with him. And I'm still connected to him today. He's like one of the only few people still over there in that Red Sea region. But I was supposed to at that time I only had one. I had a daughter. My oldest, we were like
Is he a GOCC guy?
Yes. But they're not. They're still like that whole area, just like Andrew said, they're totally dismantled. Like most of the people over there went through a lot of financial hardships, a lot of medical hardships, like Andrew was saying. A lot of people over there were dying. I know that for a fact. I mean, they were dying for different reasons. And like he said, they didn't have to do with the church directly, but they weren't, I think it was like a lot of things going on at one time. So, so where the people weren't getting assistance in a lot of areas. So they were kind of left over there to like kind of, figure it out, not knowing how to move over there. And so I was supposed to be like over there, and I had bought a plane ticket. I had done everything, like I was there. And it's just like I was supposed to have like meetings with the elders over there and everything. And it just seemed like God just stopped it every way he could, because the elders didn't like approve me to come over there and visit, because I wanted to see firsthand how the people were over there living before I decided to make this huge move to the other side of the world. And I was going to go with a couple other sisters in our camp, and they were well traveled, so they knew how to move, as far as traveling internationally, things like that. So we, it was a few of us, but we wanted to go because, like I said, this was the height of the flea doctrine, and so we wanted to see, like, before we do this, we need to put eyes on what's going on. And it was like not allowed for people to go over there and see firsthand before you made a decision. You had to go, and you just had to go. If you were gonna move, just move. It's gonna be off your own funds, off your own wanting. And as I'm thankfully the Lord stopped it all. But after it was stopped for us to go over there and see. I was told how people were, they were asking the church to help, with money and assistance with certain things. They weren't able to find jobs in some instances, and how the church just didn't come through and provide and help them with anything. They didn't come through and help with anything. And like I said, they were still pushing for people to get out of here at that time, like on every Sabbath class broadcast. And it's speaking, as far as Ricard and Lawyer, they were hitting it hard. I think at that point they were like in the UK or London. Yeah, they were in London somewhere at this time. So, but of course I think he always kept his house there in Philly too. But yeah, they were like hitting it hard to like go get out. And in my camp, just to bring it back around to my camp, people in my city who were there, like it was like two sets of people. Like one group, we had jobs, we had been to school, we had been to university, we got our degrees, we had a little money, so we were saving. But you had this other group who were like they couldn't even afford a passport, and they had like 5 children, because of course they push you to have all these children, so they had all these children, barely able to even pay rent. And trying to save up to get across the sea, it was like frightful for a lot of people. And then it turned into like, not being frightful, but being like, jealousy, because this group of people can get away and go to the wilderness and be prepared to go to the wilderness and actually be saved by God, when He comes. And it was like, it was a thing. It was a big thing, because it was kind of like a war, like a civil war in there between like the haves and the have-nots. And I was just trying to bring it full circle. And I actually still talk to the guy that's over there in the Red Sea region, and I talk to him, and I'm like, man, like just all the stories that I know, I'm definitely not gonna speak on it on here, but it's wild. I mean, it's just like the wild west over there. I don't know where Andrew lived. I'm not gonna speak on the city where this guy lives. It's not in Cairo. It's a few hours away. But it's just like the Wild West. And GOCC, like the leadership wasn't doing anything to assist the people. And so like after that, around 2016 is when our split happened, because of all the reasons that I spoke on before. And we kind of broke off into like an independent organization. I'm not going to give the name. It's nothing nobody's ever heard of at all. But and they're, like I said, their teachers are now more close to like I would say like an IUIC. That's kind of where they fall. I wouldn't say as extreme as ISUPK, but they're kind of like in between there somewhere. And yeah, they and then it's another remnant that connected back because Lawyer came down here and um, handled a lot of our dissension and kind of aired a lot of things out and had councils with a lot of people and everything. And so when all that was over, one group went back to GOCC and stayed with them, and then the other group was in the group that now that my ex-husband he's still kind of loosely affiliated with, that had the more extreme views.
Wow, that is crazy. And so the split ended up happening. So there is no real remnant of or residue of the GOCC affiliation, right? That is long gone at this point, would you say?
Oh no. Here in the city it is. And they've actually grown within like the last couple of years. I haven't been in it since like 2000, the middle of 2018. And that's the split was like in where the lawyer came down here. He established a new, like deaconship or leadership for the people who chose to stay with GOCC. He established that, and it was small at first, but then he decided to grow it. I mean, it grew. It grew because they were promoted. So they're
You know
going
something?
strong.
Yeah, and that's why we need to step up to the plate to expose this falsehood, so the people who are in there, Lord willing, that the seed would be sown, that they too would open up their eyes to the deception, the falsehood that GOCC is promoting, and that they would come out. Because truth be told, what GOCC is promoting is outright and flat out heresy. I mean, this isn't just minor disagreements. Oh, we just agree to disagree. This is just no. These are major heresies that they're promoting, and not only that, but the fact is that this sort of mindset fosters that sort of environment, whether they will admit it or not, because you're going to eventually come across individuals who have aberrant, not just ideologies, but also aberrant character. And they're going to interact in a way with people that is, as the sister was noting, is not good. And doctrinally, I'm just going to say, just from the doctrinal standpoint, look, what GOCC promotes is not what the Bible is actually teaching. It is a distorted version. For example, the sister mentioned the virgin birth. Jesus Christ, excuse me, Jesus Christ, who they ignorantly refer to as Yeshua, being the son of Joseph, is not in Luke chapter 1 or in Matthew chapter 1 at all. In fact, all you have to do is read both of those chapters, and you're going to see for yourself that it is completely absent. Reading the early church writings, Ignatius of Antioch was a direct disciple of the Apostle John, and he affirms the virgin birth of Jesus Christ, that Jesus was born of Mary supernaturally. He affirms this. Yet somehow GOCC is trying to convince you into a belief system that was rejected by the disciples of the apostles, by the apostles themselves, but was embraced only by the heretics like the Ebionites. There was a group of Ebionites that believed that Jesus was the son of Joseph, but these groups were heretical. They were rejected by the congregations established by the apostles themselves. These men were completely rejected. And so I would tell you, if you're in GOCC at the moment, anyone who's watching this or will watch this in the future, if you are a member of GOCC, this is the moment for you to leave, because the Lord has not guided you into GOCC. You have been beguiled by the false doctrines of GOCC to join that organization. They are not led by the Most High. They are led by a man-centered, unbiblical misunderstanding of the scriptures. And so I would tell you right now, critically look into what they teach. In fact, I'm going to do apologize. Okay, there we go. All right, here we go. Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yep. Can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
so let me go ahead and show this playlist. This is entitled GOCC Exposed. All right. Oh, give me a second. Let me do something real quick. Gotta make this full screen. Give me 1 second, y'all. I do apologize. So this is the I'm just screen shared the wrong thing. So this is the relevant playlist that I want everyone to check out whenever they get a chance. It's going to be in the comment section and in the video description after this is done. So definitely check this out whenever you guys get a chance. I'm going to show it in a moment. This playlist has a refutation of virtually all of GOCC's false doctrines. If you want to see how much they're getting wrong, look no further than this playlist. This playlist right here absolutely debunks GOCC's bad interpretation of the scriptures. So it's GOCC Exposed on this channel, but I'll have the link so you guys can check it out. And I certainly want you guys to know that, the people who have spoken today are sharing their experience precisely because they saw the falsehood that GOCC is promoting. Sister Jasmine, can you let everyone out there know you are today an embracer of Christian orthodoxy? In other words, you rejected all the false doctrines that GOCC promotes, the 12 tribes chart, nations breakdown, the poor understanding that they have of Jesus Christ, the poor understanding of salvation. You rejected all those things, and today you embrace the Orthodox biblical Christian faith. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. I denounced everything that was taught in there. I can't even think of one sound piece of theology in there that they taught. So yeah, I can't say that I still agree with A, B, and C, but because their definition of loving your neighbor isn't even right, So yeah, I denounce everything. I am I would say totally into the Orthodox Christian faith. The only thing I don't do, I still don't celebrate a lot of holidays. I mean, I never did before. I still will do Resurrection Day. I don't believe Christmas is wrong. I'm not sure. I'm not well researched on.
But you personally don't. But you don't celebrate it because GOCC claims if you're a Christian, every Christian is doing all that. But clearly you're not. Clearly Andrew's not. And so it goes to show that GOCC's understanding is wrong in the fact that, they think that there's a uniformity amongst Christians in regards to that. And yet you guys are examples that is completely false. On the other hand, it's ironic. They claim to be uniform in their doctrinal beliefs. But then behind the scenes, as you were noting, there was disagreement in the camp on doctrinal interpretation. Andrew mentioned that there were people that didn't agree with everything. And Will, who was the bishop of the Los Angeles camp, he mentioned the same thing. Brother George, you can attest to the fact that in your group, in the Australia camp, there was not uniformity in every minute detail as GOCC likes to try to convey to others. There was clear disagreements that people just kept quiet about in hopes that they would further the so-called cause of GOCC, right? So in other words, there's not uniformity in every last thing, because GOCC gives off the impression that there's uniformity, but clearly there was disagreement even within your collective, right? Even with the whole, remember we were talking about the flat earth, not flat earth, even things like that. Even if it's just small things, there's still disagreement there, right?
Look, they can't agree on anything. That's a fact. They have the 12 tribes chart. Look, one thing that they want you to agree with is that African Americans are Judah. You know what I mean? That's what these groups want to push. It's just another black nationalistic movement. You know what I mean? And of course, there's issues among, on the treatment of in the past of African Americans, and as society evolves to a more tolerant perspective on other races and cultures and things of that nature, I guess we just have to be patient. That's another topic, but that's the one thing that they want everyone to know. You know, it's funny because you know they want to keep talking about Jesus is black. I'm of Polynesian descent, and not once have I heard like Polynesians complain, well, why can't Jesus be a Maori? Why can't he be a Samoan? You know what I mean? And if those are the things that are running through your mind, like Jesus was a Jew, he was from the Middle Eastern region. Go to the Middle East, see what the people look like there. That's what he would have looked like. That's not what it's about, though.
I'll say like
and
this.
I'm just
I'll
going
go a
off on
step further.
tangent here.
They have no evidence for the idea that they're promoting regarding Jesus's purported look or ethnicity. First of all, their misunderstanding of Revelation 1:14-15 is easily debunked when a person looks at the Greek text and they realize what's actually being said in that text. And even just the context, it's not saying what they're saying. There's no mention of texture there. And even when they try to so-called precept, misusing the term precept, Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel chapter 10, when one looks at it in its underlying text, the original languages, they'll realize that's not talking about a hair texture or color or anything in there. In fact, Daniel 10, the one that they like to misuse, the color of bronze or something like that with the King James reading, when they look at the Hebrew text, it says the appearance of polished bronze when it sparkles, basically. And they take that, well, because they see the word bronze, it has to be like their conception of what they think Jews look like or something like that, when the reality is even his hair like the pure wool, not realizing that the term wool was used colloquially to indicate color, not texture. We notice according to Isaiah chapter 1 verse 18, where God himself declares that the people of Israel's sins would be like wool. But of course, they don't pay attention to little, minute details like that. They try to reinterpret the scriptures anachronistically with a modern Western mindset, not an ancient Near Eastern Israelite mindset, a completely modern Afrocentric, ignorant, because the ignorant mindset that they have causes them to see it from a Western Afrocentric mindset. They try to reinterpret the scriptures in that sense. But here's the thing. Check out things like the Dura Europos frescoes. And don't be...
What's that?
Yeah, the Dura Europo frescoes, for those who don't know, are fresco wall depictions made by the Israelites of the diaspora in Syria. Don't get confused by the name, y'all. Europos has nothing to do with Europeans. It has everything to do with the city that these diaspora Israelites were scattered into. And in their own synagogue, they made depictions of themselves. Guess what? Their depictions don't mirror this idea that in order for Jesus to be a Jew, he has to have a particular phenotype, especially when you realize that the depictions run the gamut, showing that the Israelites were an amalgam of different appearances. Of course, GOCC might say, well, yeah, we don't disagree with that, except for the fact that they claim that Jesus is a particular depiction because he has to be, since they claim that the tribe of Judah are African Americans, with no evidence whatsoever other than poor appeals to Deuteronomy 28. Let me tell you guys something, and this is a fact. The genetic evidence isn't there. The antiquated sources that they read, when one looks into them, one will realize that it backfires on them. There's so much there, and we're going to get into it little by little on this channel, all the refutations of these false breakdowns and understandings of scripture. But man, George, it's crazy, right? They're trying to convince Polynesians. It's funny because not even the other Hebrew Israelite groups agree with them on that point. But somehow Polynesians are Naphtali. And with no evidence whatsoever other than, the misunderstanding of or the misreading of Bible passages in light of a very poor grasp of the language and everything else. For those out there, if you want to check out a refutation of the idea that Polynesians are Israelites, I would recommend the book by Tudor Parfit entitled, I believe it's the History of the 12 Tribes. No, excuse me. Let me actually pull it up. If you don't have it on your end, Brother George, I want to get the exact title. Give me a second, y'all. Let me just pull it up. I'm going to my bookshelf. Y'all. All right. I do apologize for that. So the name of the book is The Lost Tribes of Israel, the history of a myth. Now, this doesn't mean that the tribes of Israel are a myth. This is talking about all the mythos surrounding the tribes of Israel, the lost tribes of Israel, and how various cultures were perceived to be Israelites, so-called, but once actual evidence is presented, the claims are debunked. So this book is a good refutation against those claims. So the name of the book is The Lost Tribes of Israel, The History of a Myth by Tudor Parfitt. That's Tudor. Last name spelled Parfitt. Refutation against those claims. Get this book if you get a chance. Scholarly refutation against all those faulty claims. You have refutations against Native American claims, Japanese. You know, the Japanese were believed to be Israelites. Isn't that funny? I am waiting for the day for one of the Hebrew Israelite camps to incorporate the Japanese into their 12 tribes chart, because there were allegations and claims made for them. For the Pashtuns, there's so many groups that were claimed to be Israelites, and none of them line up genetically. So it has nothing to do with African Americans particularly. It's many groups that are being claimed, and when you look at the genetic evidence, it just isn't there, right? When you look at the actual, evidence of the people, it's not there. It's just not. And the claims that are made for them fall apart. Get the book, Refutations Against That. But I definitely want to wrap this thing up. I want to thank the brother Andrew for coming on through. Andrew is a former deacon of GOCC. I want to thank the sister Jasmine for coming on through. The sister Jasmine was a member formerly of the Tennessee camp. Pardon me. The brother George, want to shout him out. He was formerly a member of the GOCC Australia. In fact, he headed up the GOCC Australia. And so definitely want you guys to know that I appreciate your testimonies tonight. Truly, truly, truly appreciate it. If there's anything you guys want to say as parting words, I'm going to let the sister go first, then the brother Andrew, and then the brother George. Sister, is there anything that you want to give the audience out there? Any parting words, maybe words of advice, encouragement for people who are on the fence, who want to leave GOCC? What you could tell them? I think maybe the sister Jasmine's not there. All right, brother Andrew, I'll start with you since the sister Jasmine is not there. Are there any words of encouragement that you would like to give people?
Sure. So I'm going to read John chapter 10, verse 7, and I only read a few verses, and that'll summarize, my parting thoughts. So Jesus again said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd." So the reason I read that is because there may be members of, whether it be GOCC, IUIC, any one of the alphabet Hebrew Israelite organizations. And there may be people listening that are part of other organizations that are, intrinsically heretical. If there is any doubt that you have not been given the gospel, have not been showed the gospel, because the gospel produces faith, faith produces love, love produces good fruit. And if all you can see around you is rotted and decrepit fruit, if we're just speaking in context of the organizations we've been touching on, their history is well documented. Like I was saying earlier, you can find a great breakdown on Faithful's channel. Just looking from when the One West Hebrew Israelite organization started to the splinters the branches that came out of them, and just look at the fruit. If that is the fruit of the gospel, if you feel like that is the fruit of the gospel, you have to truly take that into thoughtful prayer and ask God to reveal to you what is true, because that is not the fruit, not according to the scriptures that we have, not according to the testimonies. So I would encourage anybody, if you feel any doubt, that's okay. Take that to prayer. Ask God through the Holy Spirit to reveal that cloudiness, that veil that may be over your eyes. And it'll be done. If you ask anything you ask in Jesus' name, he will do. It's written of in scripture. So that's what my parting words would be. God bless everybody. This was, and I know what the conversations that Faithful, George, and it seems like Sister Jasmine is on the same page. This is not to slander, to discourage anybody. Listen, our testimonies are our testimonies. This is the ongoing polemic that has been going on, I mean, since the church's inception against heresy. And we were just caught up in another heresy. But by the grace of God, through his mercy, we've been brought out. We've been shown the true gospel as it is written. And those that we know are still entangled, caught up in the imagination, we're just trying to help cast it down with a spirit of humility and gentleness and meekness. And so I say all that with love. Thank you, Faithful. Love you, my brother George. Love you, Sister Jasmine. Love you. Love everybody. May God bless you and have a blessed night.
Thank you, brother. Sister Jasmine, are you there? To the Sister Jasmine, are you there? If not, gonna have to move on to the brother George. Brother George.
Hey man, I just wanted to thank Jasmine and Andrew for coming on, and sharing their testimony. It's not easy, This is almost like another form of public humiliation. We used to be pushers of this falsehood, and I know it's not easy to come out and on a public forum and confess to these things. So, I just wanted to commend you for that. And the scripture you brought out, Andrew, it's just that simple, that Jesus is the way, and Jesus is the truth, if you believe the Bible. And if you believe that, then you won't get swayed on these other things. You won't start doubting, because a lot of people will start doubting they believe in God because maybe they might find out that they're not on this false chart that these guys promote. You know what I mean? Just for an example. But Andrew and Jasmine, just wanted to commend you for coming on and speaking out. Is that, let's be honest, that's what's his name? That's Gary. Greg. Sorry, Greg. What's happening, Greg?
At some point in the future, we're gonna have Greg on the channel. Be on the lookout for that. Old school One Wester.
Kabosh.
Old school One Wester. So that's probably gonna be the next thing that we do, Lord willing, and definitely have him on to share his experience with the original school. But yeah, George.
Yeah, I just want people people to start using logic. You know what I mean? Believe it or not, discernment is a spiritual thing as well. It's not just this whole prophecy, because they get caught up in this prophecy stuff. And no, God gave us intelligence. He gave us logic. He gave us discernment. You know what I mean? And if you're starting to see patterns, that you can just see that this is not right. And obviously if it doesn't fit the biblical narrative in its context, you know, follow that logic. I think I saw it on a meme. I don't like quoting memes. But this meme, it was true. And I saw it on Michelle's page. It says, if you even think you're in a cult, you probably are in one. So I'm just gonna leave it with that. And thanks, Mike, for having us on. Hey, love you too, brother Andrew. And I know you're gonna be on our channel next week doing a sermon, right?
Yes, sir. God willing.
Looking forward to that. So he's back on the scene. He's back.
Yeah, on the right side.
We thought you were
on the right side this time.
We thought you were in the middle of the Amazon teaching the people that were the Israelites. You and Awan yourself. But
hey, shalom.
Shalom. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Peace to the people that have tuned in today.
All right.
Just keep praying for these people.
So
keep praying for me.
We got the sister Jasmine who's back. Sister Jasmine, what are your parting words and words of encouragement for people who are on the fence and are thinking of leaving GOCC? What could you tell them, especially if they're women? Like, what would you tell them?
What I would tell them is to run far, far away. Examine, study to show your own self-approved. Read and while you're reading, truly seek the Holy Spirit to reveal the truth of the scriptures to you, so that you can be, shown that doctrine is completely from hell, from Satan. And combined with I know their experiences in there are, attesting to how bad the doctrine is as well. So you really stress. I'm stressing that you get a prayer life and you really just ask God to reveal everything to you, just reveal it all to you, and just run far, far away, and just stay equipped in your journey. And I'm available to be contacted if anybody needs any type of encouragement, women specifically, but I mean men as well.
Real quick, yeah, before I forget, what would be the best way to reach all of you? I do apologize for jumping in abruptly in there, Jasmine, but I want to make sure that people know how to reach you guys. So, Sister Jasmine, how can people reach you? Andrew, definitely share your contact information, and George, of course, you can share yours. But Sister Jasmine, starting with you first, how can people reach you?
So when I came out, I deleted all social media, everything. Like, I'm totally not on anything. So if they can, Faithful, they can contact you and you can give them my email and I'll shoot it to you, or my WhatsApp or whatever.
Okay, that's what's up. Yeah. So if anyone wants to get in contact with the Sister Jasmine, definitely reach out to me in the comment section. I'll find a way for us to interact on Facebook. And if I see that you're legit, then I will certainly pass the sister's email on to you and you can correspond with her that way. As far as the brother Andrew, how can people get in contact with you?
Yep. Best way right now is going to be email. I'm still in the process of setting up a YouTube channel and social media as well. But for right now, brother Andrew at reborn.com.
Can you type it in the chat and then I'll put it on the screen? So in the live chat,
yes.
Can you type it in very quickly? And then this way it'll flash on the screen. So, but can you repeat it one more time while you're typing that?
Sure. It's brother, spelled regular, Andrew, ANDREW at reborn. Hold on, I'm in the process of typing it right now. At reborn.com. So that's what it is right there.
Okay, that's what's up. All right. And I will put it on the screen in a moment. For the brother George, let everyone know how they can get in contact with you. How can they reach you? Anyone that wants to get in contact with you, talk with you, especially if they're on the fence, how can they reach out to you, brother?
Oh, no, I'm closed like everywhere else in Corona. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Our Faith and Grace Ministries, you know, we're still kicking, we're still around, you know, by the grace of God. So yeah, Faith and Grace Ministries AU at Gmail, or you can just hit us up on YouTube or Facebook.
Right, and there's the brother.
And yeah,
this is the brother Andrew right here. So anyone who wants to reach out to him, you can reach out to him. And brother George, Faith and Grace Ministries. You want me to give them the YouTube channel so this way they can find you on YouTube?
Yeah, for sure. You know, lately we've been getting away from the Hebrew Israelite cults and just focusing on, you know, just the basic stuff, getting us through our day-to-day walk in the faith of Jesus Christ. You know, we've had plenty special guest speakers come on, and yeah, tomorrow we got Pastor Andrew from Just Jesus Ministries doing a sermon on the ambassadors for Christ. And next week we're going to be having
the real ambassadors for Christ, right?
Yes, the real ambassadors for Christ.
Not those fakers over there on the street corner.
And we're going to be having Andrew on. Oh, thanks, bro. Doing a sermon, which I'm looking forward to today. So this is. I used to enjoy Andrew's sermons because it's crazy what he said, and I know we got to finish up. How even though he knew things was wrong, we had that's our channel. We just had Dr. Bernie Power. He we started going into a little bit of Islam, and this guy is a professor in that field. He works with the likes of Dr. J. Smith, another strong Christian apologist, especially dealing with Islam. But what was I going to say?
So words of
Andrew was saying
just,
about
just for people, and also again they can reach you at Faith and Grace Ministries, and so
yeah,
if you could give a one sentence, convey in one sentence, you know, best piece of advice that you could give them in one sentence.
Oh, you know the world is not that. Well, how can I say? You know, I can't think of anything right now.
Get out!
Yeah, get out! Get out! You know what? I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I'll speak to Andrew about it behind the scenes. What he said earlier about before he was coming up. But hey, thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
And definitely check out Faith and Grace Ministries. They're gonna be having a live stream with the brother Andrew. So if you love what you heard today from the brother Andrew, check him out on Faith and Grace. And also anyone who wants to reach out to the sister Jasmine, again, you can comment in this video and I will respond accordingly. And if I see that you're legit, then I will pass her email along to you. But with that being said, thank you all for showing up tonight. I appreciate every one of you. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen to this. God bless you all for taking the time to even sit here and take this all in, because it's important. This information needs to be put out there. People need to be made aware of the falsehood of GOCC, because they are deceiving people and they are causing trouble, and doctrinally speaking, and some would even argue in other areas, but the doctrines are bad. Just point blank, if we're just talking the doctrines are wrong. And so I would encourage anyone who's on the fence to watch that playlist. Again, GOCC Exposed on my channel, on the Faithful to God YouTube channel. In the playlist section, there are refutations against their false doctrines. So definitely check those out. Again, want to thank everyone for watching. Thank all the panelists. With that being said, God bless you all. I hope this has edified someone out there. And until next time, take care.